One day in the midst of endless wars, something extraordinary happened. A man appeared who single-handedly defied the will of heaven and earth. He stood in front of the giant, who was scornfully looking at the one who, in his opinion, dared not disturb his peace. But when this warrior clenched his fist, the bandage on him flew into small pieces. He was a warrior with an indomitable will that did not fade under any circumstances. One-on-one with his fist and courage, he entered the battle. The demon of Hua Mountain, who ruled the world, is the story of a man who became a legend. His fist, the demon of Mount Hua. Let's start listening to this exciting story, immersing ourselves in it. Once upon a time, a demonic sect arose in the world and declared war on others, seeking to conquer their power. Their clashes led to the fact that the masters of martial arts were forced to unite to fight against a common enemy. After 3 years of war, the long-awaited peace came. The martial arts alliance was victorious, erasing the demonic sect from the face of the earth. However, the losses of the winners were immeasurably large. The Taoists of Mount Hua believed that this was a real curse. They were outraged that for incredible losses they received only a pitiful piece of land. The head of Mount Hua, senior monk Haiyun Cheong, decided to rise to such a level of strength that no one would even dare to look towards the mountain. Behind him stood another senior monk, wary that his master might decide to do something unexpected. He kept closer, fearing that the master might decide to do something extraordinary. The monk approached, not knowing what the future held for their sect. But when he looked up, he froze in shock. A terrible picture opened before him. The area was destroyed, houses were burning, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. Someone dared to kill all these people. It seems that the village was attacked by local bandits. One of the people present said that recently there were rumors about the rampage of bandits. The senior monk moved closer to the corpses, examining them carefully for clues. He started it because he was sure. Somewhere in the crowd he heard a faint moan. He loudly declared that he heard a sound, as if someone was still alive. The chief understood that in such conditions the chance of survival was slim. The elder monk began to sort through the bodies, trying to find at least some signs of life. He threw corpses and debris in different directions without stopping. Suddenly, under the rubble of blood-stained boards, he found a living person. It was a child with black hair who survived in the middle of the ruins. Looking at it, they couldn't believe it was possible. It seemed to them that his lust for life bordered on madness. The elder monk immediately picked up the boy, whose body did not have a single unscathed spot. The boy clenched his teeth and blood streamed down his face. The boy's body was riddled with debris, and as soon as he coughed, a large pool of blood came out of his mouth. The child began to regain consciousness, but when he opened his eyes, he saw a terrible scene. His companion lay beside him, cold and dead, with an unhealed wound on his neck. The boy's world seemed to have collapsed at his feet. Despite his condition, he fully felt the pain of loss. 5 years have passed among the mountains, like swords stuck in the ground. These sword-like peaks seemed to direct the heavens themselves. Their peaks resembled blooming lotuses, which is why this mountain massif was called the Lotus Ridge, the resting place of the Mount Hua sect. The same boy who had been rescued 5 years earlier was climbing the great 100-foot staircase. His legs were shaking, but he was walking forward. Ahead was a difficult distance, 3 kilometers uphill. Through the pain, he continued to climb without stopping. He kept looking at his leg, which was covered with wounds. But despite this, he convinced himself that he would be able to endure. For him, these wounds seemed like trifles. He repeated to himself again and again that he would definitely be able to reach the top. Step by step, he reassured himself. A little more, a little more. He was watched by Master Dan Ho, elder of Mount Hua, and senior monk Hunzo. 5 years have passed since I first met Dan Ho. Since then, every day without exception, he climbed these stairs. When he said he wanted to climb alone, everyone scoffed and called him crazy. Even martial artists have been known to have difficulty on these stairs, and with an injured leg, it seemed impossible. Even with healthy legs, climbing a 100-foot flight of stairs every day is incredibly difficult. One day, Dan Ho was climbing in heavy snowfall. He fainted from exhaustion, but the next day, although ill, he set out again. Every day, collecting his thoughts, he climbed the mountain again and again. This went on for a whole 5 years. That's how damn Ho was. The endless conquest of the mountain allowed him to build up some muscle. At the top, he was met by the master asking if he had climbed again. Dam Ho apologized to him for disobeying again. The master reminded him that he knew about the condition of his leg, with which nothing could be done. But he also understood that the boy would not obey, and asked him to come over. Dam Ho replied that he was fine, but the master insisted that he come. When the boy approached, the master sat him on a chair and began massaging his leg, asking him not to move. He repeatedly repeated that massaging the muscles after training will not harm, but on the contrary, will help. Even during the massage, you could see how much he was in pain on his face. "Why are you so reckless?" asked his master. "Are you so eager to die that you endanger my ever-grumpy master?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," Dame replied quietly. "In the martial arts of Manhwa, footwork is of the utmost importance. If you pass the exam and become a student, you will have to learn Gugunbo. This is the most difficult technique of footwork, which even the most capable students master with difficulty." Master understood that no matter how much he practiced because of Dam's leg injury, he would never master Gugunbo. Then the master told him, "For happiness, a person needs a hardened heart. If your heart is hardened, fate will see to it that you don't suffer anymore." The lady understood these words completely. However, he lost faith in fate a long time ago. Intense training was taking place on Mount Hua. The students were told not to relax and to learn the art of Bukhovan in order to resemble a tiger attacking its prey. The master demanded to use all the muscles of the body for a powerful blow. He demonstrated how punches should carry power, showing it with his movements. Suddenly he stopped, noticing who had come to him. "Finally decided to congratulate the elder?" Dam replied that she was just heading to Yangbo Palace. It became clear to them because all the martial arts of Mount Hua were gathered there. The master appreciated his persistence, understanding how it was not easy for him, although he knew that this was a real test for the boy. Then the master said to the lady sincerely, he noted that if Dame continues training, she will eventually become a real master. In response, Dam only asked if he could continue on his way. After that, he headed in the given direction. The other students looked up to him as Gong Gyun's main student. They believed that this lame boy had become the head disciple only by chance. How is this possible? Is he even capable of practicing martial arts? The students were surprised, watching Dam. Master forced all these skeptics not to waste time, but rather to start training. Mount Hua espouses the idea of disciple unity, but only Dam seems to understand how illusory it is. Whenever these thoughts came up, he tried to push them away and not dwell on them. Soon he reached Yangbo Palace. At the top of the stairs, one of the swordsmen met him, expressing respect for his steadfastness. They invited him to pass without being shy. As head disciple Gong Gyun, he was allowed through without a hitch. However, every time he realized that all these Hua mountain techniques were useless to him, then he picked up a book called Jukyopsu, the basics of Mount Hua's martial arts distributed to all students. It was written that with the help of this technique, one Taoist was able to split a giant boulder in half. But even this was considered a basic art. All Dame could do was practice this technique for years. He honed his moves until the air flew around him. His direct hits sounded like a loud thump. Energy was gathering around him, and his long hair was blowing in different directions. He accompanied each blow with characteristic words. Yukapguan, Buhogwan, Jukyopsu. These were the basics for him, but they were all he had. The two swordsmen outside the palace debated Dam, wondering that he was allowed to enter when they could only stand guard. They believed that any external student was vastly superior to him. In their opinion, he should have realized his limitations due to his leg injury a long time ago. After completing the training, Dam went home. On the way, he met acquaintances. They were Han Su on the left, Mu Ken in the center, and the big man on Jen on the right. They praised him, though Mu teased him more as they noticed him coming back from Yanbo's palace. Dam greeted the elders, whom he had not seen for a long time, and they called him younger brother. They asked how he was doing and how his teacher was doing. Mu explained that he was too busy and hoped it didn't look like he was neglecting the teacher. To all these words, Dam answered only with silence, or briefly explained that his teacher understands everything. When they inquired about his legs, he replied that they should not worry. The big man was annoyed that Dam was still continuing his training. He advised him to finally put aside his pride and become a scholar, gaining fame as a respected Taoist without a difficult path. The lady only replied to the older brother that he should also give up martial arts and become a scientist. The big man immediately grabbed him by the collar. The nurse tried to calm the angry big man. Then Mu also intervened and asked him to stop. Zdroviak justified this by the fact that Dame was wasting time and did not understand what was best for him, assuring that he would still remember these words. "Don't worry, your words will stay in my heart forever," Dame replied calmly. Sayu asked not to take his words seriously. She pointed out that Ongun is not saying this out of hatred, and she offered to turn to them at any time if he faced difficulties. They promised to always help him, to which Dam bowed and said that he had better go. They did not detain him. When the three of them were left, Mu asked the healthy man why every conversation they had with Dam turned into something tense. He added that even unconsciously, it is worth remembering how much pain Dam feels every day. Zdroviak did not care about this, considering that he was just giving him friendly advice. because training only postponed the inevitable. He was sure that nothing would change in tens of years. At worst, a martial artist with an injured leg will not last long in the outside world. Hyun watched as Dam walked. He thought that nothing in this world could convince this boy. He remembered how he once wanted Dam to follow his path and become a scientist. But he changed his decision a long time ago, seeing the strength of spirit in the young man. At Hyun Seo's apartment, they had dinner together, and Dam thanked the teacher sincerely. Hyung admitted that he was lucky to have a student like Dam. Dam understood that this was the most he could do for the teacher. Because if it wasn't for Hun, he wouldn't be here. It happened 5 years ago. If senior monk Hyun Seo hadn't found Dam, he wouldn't have had a chance not only to get to MANHUA, but also to survive. To Dam Hyun, he was more than just a master. Their bond resembled that of a father and son. At dinner, Hyun asked Dam, "Do you still want to do martial arts?" The lady answered emphatically that she did. Hyung then asked if he knew who his master was. Dam guessed that it was Elder Jeong Gunja. The answer was correct. Jeong Gunja was the strongest genius of Mount Hua, and Hyan was his disciple. Although he is now little remembered, it was thanks to him that Mount Hua once reached the pinnacle of power. His presence suppressed enemies and inspired allies. It is a little surprising that the most outstanding genius of the sect became the teacher of a person without special talents. Because of this, among the disciples of Mount Hua, there were rumors that reached the point of absurdity. "Aren't you wondering why my master chose me out of all the disciples of Mount Hua?" Hyun asked. The lady waited impatiently for an answer. One day the master shared with him a simple truth. The true power of the sect requires not only martial arts masters, but also those who are strong in heart. The master was looking for someone who would pass on his will to the disciples of Mount Hua in future generations. He made his choice and wanted Hyun to become that man. Since then, Hyun has given up martial arts and focused on his studies. Now I understand, teacher. Forgive your student, for after all I may have disappointed you. After these words, Hyun asked Dam not to be so serious, explaining that he did not tell this to accuse. He asked if Dam knew what scientists did. Dam assumed that they were studying ancient records and learning about Taoism. However, Hyan explained that they have another task. They preserve the knowledge of the sect's martial arts. He walked over to the book wrapped in cloth. He said that although he himself is not a great master of martial arts, his knowledge gave him some experience. Somehow he came across this book and opened it. It was the heavenly cultivation technique. This technique has existed since the founding of Mount Hua by their ancestors. Mount Hua's martial arts did not stand still, constantly evolving and becoming more and more complex. Hyun knew that, with his injury, he would never master them completely. Dame had also realized this for a long time, but still said that she had no intention of giving up. Hyun thought that this cultivation technique could help, and asked Dam to take the book since he had already strengthened his body enough. But as he handed over the book, Hyun urged caution. This book has long been a legacy of the ancient times of Mount Hua. Since Dame did not find a solution in modern techniques, let the ancients help him find the way of the warrior. As the teacher said, his muscles are already well developed, thanks to the daily climbs to Mount Hua. However, his inner strength was still weak. Imagine heaven in your mind. Feel its heaviness and clarity. Discard unnecessary thoughts, unite with heaven. Rule the heavens only with the power of thought. Meanwhile, So was standing by the 100-foot path with another student. They were surprised to notice Dam's absence, because he never missed training. And today, he disappeared somewhere. Seo was worried that if he didn't show up, she wouldn't know about Master Hyunggim's selection. Her friend offered to find him on her own, and Seo thought Chunggyun would appreciate it. At this time, the lady was approaching an old house with a thatched roof and wooden walls. He opened the door and stepped inside. He collapsed on the floor, barely breathing. Hyun had already woken up and started to stretch. Hyun walked over to Dam, realizing that he was extremely exhausted. At the door, he picked up his shoes. Looking through the crack, he saw that the lady was sleeping. He immediately came over and started massaging his painful leg. It was all he could do for him at this point. The next morning, clouds slowly floated over the mountains. Under one of the waterfalls, Dam sat in meditation, thinking that for the first time his body did not hurt, even though he had trained to exhaustion. He guessed that the master had helped him in some way, perhaps by transferring some of his energy. While he was meditating, Brother Vaughn approached him. Vaughn interrupted his training by calling him over. He looked down at Dam's feet, thinking that he would have to call this crippled elder. In general, he was never ready to accept Dame as an equal. He envied that this boy had only become a head disciple through luck. One asked himself why, when everyone in the sect despised him, this circus was still going on. Finally, he handed over what he had come for, reminding Damo not to forget to show up for selection. At that moment, Vaughn looked into Damu's eyes and felt fear. They were completely black. The lady was a little surprised. Did the master really decide to conduct the selection? After that, he turned around and started walking. He did not understand what was happening. He wondered why Dam was walking so fast. Despite the injured leg, Dam was still faster than him. The lady was already approaching the Jimnu Palace, the symbol of the power of the entire Manhwa sect. When the students saw him, they immediately asked themselves what he was doing here. Behind his back, they discussed that the lame man had no place here, and that perhaps he too wanted to acquire the master's techniques. Looking at him, they remembered that as Jong-gyun's head disciple, he had the right to participate. The students whispered that Dam, with her injured leg, would not pass the selection, which is held through a duel. Sayu was happy when she saw that he still made it. She asked him not to listen to his stupid brothers, who were just jealous of him. Dam bowed to her, admitting that he had not even expected such support. Suddenly, a man entered, ordering everyone to shut up and greet Master Yeonggim. Everyone lined up in front of the gate, which began to slowly open. The students showed deep respect for the great master. The gates opened wider and wider, enveloping the atmosphere with tension. The master's face approached, which became visible behind the gate. When the master came out completely, he immediately greeted the students. He introduced himself once again for those who don't know him. "I'm Yeonggim." He explained that he was here on the orders of the sect head, who wanted him to train as many disciples as possible in his techniques. However, the master didn't want to waste time on garbage. He didn't care if it was a head disciple, an outsider, or even a bastard. He will teach only the most talented. The students wondered why even external students were allowed. But isn't it too much to allow everyone? Some doubted whether the sect leader was afraid of their techniques being leaked. At that moment, the master announced, "Let the selection begin, and let the most worthy win." Dame realized that everyone has a chance to win, regardless of background. He clenched his fists, hoping that even with his leg he could hold on. Then Mu-kyung approached him with a question. He asked the master how he would choose the most worthy. The master immediately warned Kion that his legacy might be useless to him, but Kion replied that it would be strange to ignore such a possibility. After all, with a high probability in the future, his student will represent Manhwa. The temptation is too great. Kyung also said that he would still continue to study the art of Sunset Purple Sky. "Your heritage conflicts with my training, and I am not ready to give up my years of work," Kyung spoke. And the master knew he was well informed. The master explained that those who wish will fight among themselves, and he will choose a student based on the results of their performances. After hearing this, Mu-kyung decided to give up, preferring to avoid a fight with his siblings. Then the master ordered the conversation to stop and the selection to begin immediately. He summoned Eungyong and Somgyong first. "Yes, master," they both agreed. The man swung his stick to hit the drum. As soon as the shot sounded, it was the signal to start. They faced each other, Yoon-kyung with the plum flower fist art against Som-kyung's 7-star sword technique. Mu and Sayu debated which one of them would win. Som-gayong, a swordsman, believed that only he deserved to receive the master's legacy, clutching a wooden sword in his hands. Yeon-kyung clenched his fists, reminding himself whose legacy was being fought for. It will not be easy to acquire the techniques of a master. He invited his opponent to see which of them is stronger. Soma's 7-star sword technique was based on speed, and he planned to end the battle quickly. He swung his sword, shouting that it was nothing personal. At that moment, he swung his sword. His strike was incredibly fast. Un was ready for Soma's swift attack. It was hard to believe that in his hands was an ordinary wooden sword. Un decided to counterattack by attacking with his fist, which was not easy at this speed. He noticed that Som had opened up and decided to seize the moment. With one eye through his hand, Som saw Un's fist coming towards him. In a split second, he ducked his head, avoiding a blow that was as hard as a rock and as fast as a bullet. How did Un become so fast? Thought Som. He then decided to show off his speed by swinging his sword, which flew past Un's head. Orn's main goal is to keep Soma from getting away, as his plum blossom fist is only effective at close range. But probably Som guessed that Un wanted to close the distance. Swinging his sword once more, Som exclaimed that Un was overestimating his strength. What incredible power! The audience held their breath. Dame watched intently, seeing one side try to close the distance while the other defended it. It would be good if Dam could watch all the fights, because due to the long training alone, his actual combat experience is almost zero. On the battlefield, both fighters were not going to give up. Some decided not to hold back any longer. Just like him, Un pushed off the ground, both of them walking towards each other. The stones flew apart under their feet, breaking into pieces. Som warned Un to be careful because now his blade was indistinguishable from the real one. "Thank you for reminding me," replied Un. The 7-star sword technique was lightning fast. Un barely had time to dodge. Meanwhile, the energy of the plum blossom fist art was already accumulating on his hand. A bright flash flashed near his palm. Un's palm was already close to Som's stomach. Catfish's eyes widened as he felt the pressure of the blow against his stomach. His body is like a feather, flew in the other direction from this incredible blow. Yoon won. The spectators shouted, raising their hands, and the master began to descend to the arena. One of the spectators was pleasantly surprised. He had not felt such excitement for a long time. The other, although weaker, also wanted to try his hand. Some concedes defeat, and Un holds out his hand, helping him up and calling the fight great. Unbelievable power, Dam thought, realizing that this was only the first match. The students were even more inspired. The atmosphere has changed a lot. Dam had never seen the sect's disciples act like this. Was it because of the master standing behind? He turned his head in his direction. The master's eyes immediately met his gaze. The master was amazed, because he recognized him as the boy that Hyun-soo had picked up a few years ago. The lady felt incredible pressure from just one look from the master. The master thought that maybe this guy didn't belong here. The next fight was announced between Han-so and Mugyul. Plum Blossom Swordswoman Soyu was the only female martial artist on Manhwa, and everyone knew it well. Many believed that they did not even need to watch to guess the result. Stepping into the arena, she was ready to let Mu strike first like a junior, but he respectfully invited her to make the first move. After these words, she warned him that such pride could lead to anger. Pride is necessary to rely on yourself. How can you achieve anything without it? Mu asked. However, she was already ready to strike the first blow. Swinging her sword, she invited him to defend himself. Like a plum blossom that shone with its beauty, she rushed at her opponent. After the first attack, Mu realized that she was much stronger than she appeared. He clearly realized that he would lose if he underestimated her. Su was ready to show her true swordsmanship and only asked him to defend himself. Her technique is the 24 steps of the plum blossom sword. While parrying the attack, he still tried to taunt her, asking if she knew where her blows were aimed. But his face expressed less confidence than his words. It was beautiful and effective. Every time Suya attacked, it looked like a plum blossom was blooming. This is exactly what was expected from the 24 steps of the plum blossom sword technique. Dam listened to the others' comments while standing in the crowd. Mugyul was still too weak to challenge Han-so. Gul desperately moved around the arena, telling himself that he couldn't just give up. However, his movements were too slow, and Su herself told him so. Performing the 24 steps technique, Su's hands smoothly guided the sword in the air. Gul grimaced, trying to dodge. His expression was as helpless as his hairstyle. Miraculously, he managed to dodge, and the tip of the sword flew very close to his liver. He was aware that even though it was a wooden sword, a stronger blow could cause damage. He thanked Soya for saving his life. Su praised him, saying he was great, and asked him not to give up on the first strike next time. After the fight, the crowd went wild again, admiring Soya's skill. Everyone expected this from her. She did not give a single chance for a counterattack and finished the fight confidently. Who will be next? Thought the master. Next up were students Jonghyun and Sugyun. Jonghyun was called Dam by everyone. The master was interested in what would happen next, and what to expect from the lady. Sugyun, seeing that Dam was going against him, thought, why him? He wanted to demonstrate his skills in front of the master. I thought that I could not overcome such a cripple. If he beats someone as weak as Dam, he will have nothing to brag about. Behind his back, the audience discussed that Dam would not succeed. They believed that he should have understood this and withdrawn from the competition. The lady immediately greeted with a benevolent sword, but the master intervened, asking Dam if he was the same disciple that Hyun had taken in. Coming closer, the master indicated with his hand that Dam should leave the test. Swallowing saliva, Dam did not understand why. He dared to ask the master, when he was already standing with his back to him, why he had to leave. Are you asking because you really don't know? Answered the master. The lady asked if it was because of his injured leg. Then the master emphasized that there was a serious reason for his disqualification as a warrior. The master explained that his techniques are not so easy to master for someone with limitations. The lady remained silent, not knowing what to answer. The master continued, adding that if he is a student of a scientist, then it is more logical for him to become a scientist as well. Dam asked if that meant he had to give up martial arts now. Don't you know your limits? Asked the master. Are you just trying to overcome your physical limitations? The master explained that it was physically impossible to overcome such an injury, no matter how hard he tried. He said that Dame would never be able to reach ascension. He advised to follow another path. the path of natural light that can give him. The lady firmly replied that she could not do that. He wanted to be treated the same as the others, and he told the master this directly. Although the master emanated powerful energy, he agreed and listened to the boy. He then announced that the battle was about to begin. He appealed to Soo-gyun to bring Dam back to reality. The disciples considered this the best thing that could be done for him. Soo-gyun asked Dam not to take offense as they faced each other, and Sayu immediately noticed that Dam was using a jukyopsu technique. She turned to Mu-kyung, asking if the fight should be stopped since Dam would not be able to defeat the five-element fist with this technique. But Kyun understood that this was the decision of the benevolent sword itself. Dam stood in a fighting stance, fully aware of the situation. Soo-gyun wanted to show Dam the reality he was living in. He did not want to harm him, but he understood that it was necessary for the Dam himself. Dam entered the battle, concentrating on attacking the opponent. He was determined to prove to his elders that they were not wrong about him. To the surprise of the opponent, his blows were extremely fast. The opponent fought them off, recognizing that the blows were quite powerful. As he dodged the attacks, he realized that Dam had been training relentlessly. Using the same technique as Dam, the opponent decided to attack in the same way. His attack flew past Dam's face and he barely dodged. After that, the opponent switched to his technique, the technique of five elemental fists. Dam barely had time to place blocks under powerful blows. The opponent began to attack with his legs. Dam blocked the first kick with a knee. However, the next blow was even faster and stronger. Despite this, the shot did not go through Dam's block, surprising his opponent. The opponent began to get angry because Dam was dodging his attacks. Has Dam always been this good at blocking Soo-gyun's punches? The other students began to discuss, watching the fight. At this moment, Dam felt an incredible pain in his arm, realizing that the blows were normal, but it seemed that the arm was about to fall off. Mu-kyung, with his sister by his side, admitted that Dam was doing better than he could have done on his own. However, Sayu doubted that he would be able to defeat the technique of the five elemental fists with his technique. At this moment, Dam decided to give it her all, but the situation did not allow it. Soo-gyung launched his attack and punched him hard right in the chest. The blow was so strong that Dam flew back and fell on her back. Dam clenched her fist and began to rise. Spectators did not believe that his equipment could stand up to the enemy's equipment. Soo-gyun walked up to Dam and asked if he understood the elder's words now. "No matter how many times you climb Mount Hua, the impossible will remain impossible," he said, urging Dam to accept it and give up. But Dam was not going to back down. He did not accept the option of following the path of a scientist just because he was told so. Dam was determined to prove that he had made his choice not by mistake. Even with a weak leg pulling him down, he saw no way to give up. Seeing Dam moving forward, Soo-gyun warned him once more. Dam was not going to use the five-fist technique, but since the elder was watching, he decided not to waste time. The moment came when Soo-gyun used the five-elemental fist technique. With this attack he went forward, and Dam was left to take the hit. It was incredibly difficult to withstand this pressure. Aside from the power of the punches, Soo-gyun's trained fists were as hard as steel. Dam's only option was to dodge the blows instead of taking them on the block. The other students noticed this and began to discuss how skillfully he evaded it. They were amazed at how he, despite his leg injury, seemed to fly around the arena, avoiding blows. He put his foot on the ground, creating a point of support. This allowed him to fly like lightning with a clenched fist straight at the enemy. The impact was so powerful that the energy flew in different directions, creating an echo. Soo-gyun felt the full force of this incredible blow. He could not even imagine that Dam was capable of such a thing. The lady showed strength that no one expected, surprising everyone. The audience was so enthralled that their faces showed genuine delight. The crowd started chanting his name, but it didn't last long. Soo-gyun jumped and kicked Dam, interrupting his moment of victory. The lady could not withstand this onslaught and fell to the ground. Splashes of blood flew in different directions, and his back felt the cold hardness of the arena. "This is the end," Soo-gyun spoke as he ran to finish off Dam. Dam saw his opponent's knee fly straight into his head. He exhaled and set up the block, crossing his arms to stop the blow. Soo-gyun noticed that Dam was blocking all the decisive blows, and it annoyed him. He remembered how he looked in the eyes of the elder, the one who was dragging out the fight. The lady fought heroically despite the great pain. Soo-gyun realized that even though he didn't want to use his power against the cripple, now he had no choice. The audience realized that something special was about to happen. Sayu noticed that he was starting to use the plum blossom steps. Dam's martial art cannot be compared to this, but Dam was not going to stand aside. He clenched his fist and charged. However, his powerful blow, like steel, flew past the target. He tilted his head down and saw a bright glow. This glow came from the energy of Su-gyung, who had used the gold-suppressing flame technique. The technique uses the energy of fire to suppress the gold inside the opponent, which can prove fatal, hence the name. In Taoism, there's a cycle of 5 elements: fire, gold, wood, earth, and water. Each element suppresses the other, creating a balance. Is that all? The students discussed. Shocked that Su-gyung had used the gold-suppressing flame technique against Dam. Dam was lying on the ground, barely breathing because of the unbearable pain that pierced his body. Coughing, he spat blood from his mouth, but, clenching his teeth, he continued to repeat to himself that he could not give up. Su-gyung didn't believe that Dam would be able to get up after the 5-element technique strikes and the plum blossom steps. He understood that the pain of being hit by the gold-suppressing flame must be unbearable. But Dam, even though he was crawling on his knees, was sure that he would be able to find a chance to win. As he got down on one knee, Su-gyung urged him to stop. "Junior, stop!" The call sounded, but Dam only answered, "I can't give up now." Master at this point ordered them to continue. Su-gyung was confused, not understanding how Dam was still holding on, barely moving. The master saw that Dam's spirit was not broken. He noted that Dam has not yet surrendered, and therefore the fight cannot be completed, adding that he cannot teach martial arts to those who surrender. Su-gyung hoped that Dam would surrender himself, but Dam was only getting to his feet. Su-gyung got down on one knee, quietly telling Dam that he had already lost the elder's interest. He asked if he would have to break all of Dam's bones to make him surrender. Su-gyung was ready to risk everything and pushed himself off the ground and rushed into battle. The next attack was the plum blossom sword technique. Dam fell to the ground, pierced with pain from this powerful blow. The other students were even more amazed that Su-gyung had to use the plum blossom sword technique to defeat Dam Su-gyung. Amazed spectators understood how seriously Su-gyung takes the fight. Dame gathered herself, put all her strength into trying to avoid the line of attack. But Su-gyung followed him everywhere, noticing his every move. Blood splattered in different directions from forceful blows. Dam almost didn't have the strength to even turn around. Because of this, he received several more blows. Several blows finally knocked him off his feet, and he ended up face down on the floor. Rising to his feet, Su-gyung said, "This is the reality." At this moment, Dam's brother was worried about him and asked Ongyeon how Dam's body was able to withstand all this. Ongyeon replied that despite Dam's willpower, it was impossible to overcome physical limitations. He added that the path of a master of martial arts does not suit Dam. This has already been said many times. Ongyeon explained that the elder was acting in the interests of MANHUA's future, and asked him not to feel guilty about Dam. But suddenly Mu turned his attention to the arena because they thought the battle was already over. But Dam began to rise again, heroically declaring that he was not done yet. Su-gyung was already flying at him with a sword. This was the perfect moment for Dam to take advantage of the surprise effect. The others noticed that Su-gyung was irritated and his punches became sweeping. Dam was approaching, walking straight in the direction of Su-gyung's attack. It was Dam's only chance to dodge the sword, and he took it. He used this chance with all his might. Dam's punch hit his opponent right in the stomach, as he lost his vigilance. Su-gyung flew back a few meters, but landed on his feet. "Is it finally over?" Dam thought. Coughing up blood, Su-gyung realized that he had been too careless with Dam. He understood that if Dam gathered all his strength in this blow, it could be fatal. Annoyed, he lunged at Dam with the sword again. The lady saw the same picture in front of her. The sword flew exactly along the line where his head was. This blow was much more serious than the previous ones. Dam felt the full weight of the blow as the wooden sword struck him squarely in the head. The pain that was going through Dam was incredibly terrible. Seeing this, the master declared that Dam had talent. The blow you gave Su-gyung is proof of that. However, according to him, talent becomes useless if you can't use KI. He asked Dam to realize this and surrender. But what is surrender? Dam asked himself. If he could have surrendered, he would have done so a long time ago. But now he wasn't even considering giving up. He knew that if he broke now, he would begin to doubt his abilities. His desire to become a strong martial artist, everything he worked for will be in vain. Narrowing his eyes and teeth, bowing his head, he resolutely denied his defeat. Looking the master straight in the eyes, he said that he would not give up, even if he had to die for it. "You're full of lust, aren't you?" asked the master. He added a few questions, but turned to Su-gyung now, wondering why he was delaying. Su-gyung was confused at that moment and did not understand what they wanted from him. The other disciples saw that Dam was barely moving, and the master urged Su-gyung to attack him in this state. Mercilessly, the master simply told Su-gyung to take down Dam, even though one of the students whispered to stop the fight. At that moment, Su-gyung lunged at Dam with a sword. Swinging, he begged Dam to just fall to the ground, adding, "Please." It was painful to watch, and some students even turned away. However, Dame did not fall. He wasn't weak enough to just give up. He took a blow right in the stomach. The blood became more and more, flying in different directions. No one understood why he was in such pain. Some speculated that he was trying to prove that even though his bones were shattered, he was still a martial artist. The crippled leg was unimportant to him. Sugyung turned to the elder. He repeated several times, "Elder." The elder also thought about stopping the fight. He knew that if Dam took another hit, he would not only be unable to be a master, but also unable to do simple work. However, the desperation and determination in Dame's eyes spoke for themselves. The master noticed the endless anger burning in the lady. Blood trickled down, dripping at his feet and trickling down them, each step leaving a trail of red. This made the master's heart tremble. Everyone was ready to stop the fight, and Sugyung thought Dam was a reckless fool. But this fool continued to move forward, step by step. His face was so mutilated that it barely resembled him. In the end, he couldn't stand it and fell to his knees. Sugyung apologized to him, but Dam said it wasn't the end, putting his hand on the ground trying to get up. He could barely speak but found the strength to continue. Sugun swung his sword once more, ordering him to stop. Master watched this in silence. He saw Dam's face hit the floor again. Dam fought until his last breath and was now lying down, and the other students intervened, believing that the fight should be stopped. They approached him and began to lift him. Mu and Sayu were the first to lift Dam, asking him to hold on. The master got angry and ordered to remove the students from the site and continue the test. Time passed, and Dam was carried to Mount Hua. Elder So's house stands on the top of the mountain. The barely alive Dam was brought straight to Siyo's house, loudly calling out to the elder. The door opened with a bang. The elder, seeing the crippled boy in front of him, almost fainted. He did not understand what had happened and asked the person who brought him. The student explained that it happened during the test. It seemed to him that Dam's body looked like he was participating in a battle to the death rather than a trial. He asked again who had brought him to such a state, but he was asked to calm down. This was definitely not the time to find out. In fact, it was a miracle that Dame survived at all. Hyunseo began to bring him back to his senses, asking if he could hear his voice. He took some pills out of the box. The elder didn't care what happened, he just wanted to save Dam. He begged him to survive and not to leave his master. Even Hyun couldn't hold back the tears that rolled down his cheek. Suddenly, Dam coughed, giving hope to the master. In the Chuan Palace on Mount Hua, they discussed how the elder had overcome many obstacles. They finally have martial arts masters they can be proud of. Chang Munnin, a leader in martial arts, said that their students' achievements were significant, even compared to other sects. However, the master opposite noted that there is still a long way to go. Reviving Mount Hua to its former glory requires more dedication than ever. Chin said it takes an extraordinary talent to restore a monpa, something that happens once in 1,000, not 100 people. The only thing Mount Hua needs now is one talented Gosu. All this is thanks to the sacrifices of the elder. If it wasn't for him, our sect that was left in ruins would never have recovered so quickly, said the master. 20 years ago, after the war with the demonic sect, Mount Hua faced many problems. The masters who were supposed to lead the new generation died and the Moonpa was on the verge of collapse. During this difficult time, the elder put all his strength and time into restoring Mount Hua. Because of this, he did not have the opportunity to continue practicing martial arts. He made a choice to give up martial arts for Mount Hua. With the greatest potential among the disciples, he sacrificed everything he had for the sake of the sect. However, he did not receive the miracle pill that only Chan Muninams are given. He gave Hyunjim the liquid elixirs of Mount Hua. Hyun Gim reached his level thanks to the sacrifice of his senior. Qingying immediately began the restoration of Mount Hua, devoting 20 years of painstaking work that allowed Mount Hua to become what it is today. Qingying knew this better than anyone. Over time, the master acquired a desire to create, for which Qin Yin was grateful. Even his words seemed trustworthy. But Qingying advised him to take a disciple to convey his will. He asked how the selection of the successor was going. "No problem," replied the master, promising Qingying to give the plum blossom pill to his student. Qingying then asked if the one who caught his attention was among the top students. For some reason, the master remembered Dam's face. However, he told Qingying that the best students had almost completed their training, and it was difficult to teach them new techniques. Qingying asked if he was planning to look for a disciple from the regular disciples, or even outside disciples then. The master emphasized that talent does not depend on place in the hierarchy. To become the sword that represents Mount Hua, one must have outstanding talent and effort so strong that blood and sweat will come out of them. At that moment, Hyun Seo ran into the room addressing the elder. Hyun Seo was panicking, but Jinin asked him to lower his voice, reminding him where he was now. Hyun came here after hearing that the elder was here. The elder immediately asked if Hyun had come through his disciple. It was clear that it was, so Hyun asked if the elder was trying to get his student to die. "No, I had no such intention," replied the master. "Then why did you tear his body to pieces?" Hyun asked. The master replied that it was the only way to save him. He explained that forcing Dam to leave the martial arts was a way to save him. But Hyun angrily slammed the table, declaring that this was absurd. He said that he couldn't be saved by forcing him to give up his martial arts, to which Qingying asked the younger man to calm down. The argument between the two continued, and Hyun stated that he really didn't understand the elder. The elder asked the younger, "Isn't he crippled?" He added that he did not know what a cripple could achieve by learning martial arts, although he also regretted his talent. Annoyed, Hyun asked why Dam couldn't learn martial arts because of his disability. The master believed that the Hua Mountain martial arts were too important for a cripple to master. Hyun, disappointed, told the elder that he did not expect such words from the greatest swordsman of Mount Hua. However, the swordsman disagreed, saying that he would do anything for Mount Hua. He emphasized that the pain his student suffered was for his own good. The swordsman believed that giving up stupid dreams was the best thing for Dam. Hearing this, Hyun declared that his words were complete sophistry. The swordsman asked if Hyun was aware of how cruel and difficult the path of martial arts was. He added that if his master was wrong, he would have ordered him to follow the path of a scholar and give up martial arts. The swordsman expressed surprise as to why the master had chosen such an incompetent student. Hyun was pained to hear these words from the greatest swordsman of Mount Hua. However, the swordsman continued, claiming that he didn't give the other students a chance. He said he wanted to show that the martial arts world was not a place where someone like Dam could survive. Mechnik emphasized that he does not regret his choice and decision even now. Hyun realized that him was still holding a grudge because of that incident. Hyun then turned to Chin-in. He asked Chin-in if he believed Jum's words to be true. Chin asked Hyun if his student was the guy he picked up 5 years ago. Hyun confirmed that he was, and added that Dam is part of his Reihua, asking if it's so bad that he studies martial arts. Chin began to doubt which path to choose for the prosperity of Mount Hua. Hyun Seo, seeing Chin's silence, once again asked him to answer. Finally, Chin stood up and said that it was a mistake to allow this boy to climb Mount Hua 5 years ago. For Hyun, these words were a blow to the heart, unexpected and painful. He remembered the day when Dam regained consciousness, and his eyes were burning with determination and lust for life. These were eyes that no ordinary child could have. Chin believed that if Dam mastered the martial arts, he could bring disaster upon them. He added that if Hyun hadn't begged him then, he would never have allowed Dam to become Mount Hua's disciple. To Hyun, this seemed like absolute nonsense. As he closed the door, he blurted out that teaching Dam martial arts would be a bad choice. On the way home, Hyun just begged them to wait. They waited for the moment when Dam would prove how deeply they were wrong. Hyun would never give up on him, and the tears running down his gray mustache and beard showed that. Dam Ho was in critical condition. His body was so severely damaged that if it weren't for the training, he would no longer be able to walk. He will need at least 3 years of rehabilitation for the wounds to heal. Now is the best time for Dam Ho to learn martial arts. After 3 years, his musculoskeletal system will stop growing, limiting his potential, as if the elder Hyun Gim has sentenced him to a lifetime ban from learning martial arts. However, Hyun Seo had no intention of following their rules and was sure things would turn out differently against their plans. Fortunately, Dam Ho escaped internal injuries, greatly improving his chances of recovery. The heavenly cultivation technique protected his circulatory system. Without it, he would have remained in a coma for the rest of his life, unable to move. Such was the will of heaven. The master, standing over Dam Ho's body, promised him that he would never disturb him again as he nursed him unconscious. He only asked him to hold on a little longer. The master was ready to make him a great warrior. Hyun Seo was a scientist who devoted his entire life to science, but his fighting skills remained below average. If it wasn't for Dam Ho, he would never have gone to Mount Samgong. He studied many ways to calm his heart, but in the face of danger they all seemed useless. Standing on the stone, he prepared to take a step forward. Despite his fear, he had to do it for Dam Ho. Taking a pick in one hand and holding onto the stones with the other, he resolutely began to move forward. Despite the difficulty of moving in those conditions, he moved on step by step. Finally, having overcome the path, he reached the destination. The next day, Dam Ho was still lying on the bed, resting from what he had been through. The master sat in the courtyard enjoying his tea and pondered his next steps. He pondered how to help Dam Ho regain his strength as soon as possible. The master prepared the medicine, which he later gave to his student. When he turned to Dam Ho, he barely uttered a few words, too weak to speak. The teacher was deeply moved when he saw that Dam Ho had regained consciousness. He ran up to him, asking him to stay calm and not to stress, and Dam Ho said in a weak voice, "Teacher." But Dam Ho immediately started apologizing, worried about his powerlessness. The master reassured him, explaining that he had done nothing wrong and asked him not to worry. He assured that Dam Ho's rehabilitation is going better than expected, promising to do his best. Taking out the beneficial pills, he prepared them to support Dam Ho's health. It was then that Dam Ho noticed that the teacher's hands were scratched from hard work. Dam Ho couldn't understand why the teacher's hands hurt because he only reads scriptures and does science. And then he realized that the teacher had gone to great lengths searching every stone on Manhwa to get these pills for him. Probably, under his clothes, he hides even more wounds received in this hard work. And the master himself only asked that Dam Ho take the pill as soon as possible. Taking the pill in his hands, Dam Ho quickly popped it into his mouth. "From now on, you must concentrate," the master said as Dam Ho swallowed the pill. He asked him to use the heavenly cultivation technique to spread the power of the pill throughout his body. The medicine that Dam Ho ate was what the teacher was climbing Samgong Mountain for. At its peak, he obtained a valuable herb and created cultivation pills from it called Unyandan. Known only to select scholars, the cultivation pill was a secret that few knew. It does not increase internal energy as quickly as the plum blossom pill, but when taken regularly, it strengthens the body and the musculoskeletal system. If the heavenly cultivation technique is an iron forge, Unyandan is the dry wood inside it. It is thanks to this firewood that the horn burns even stronger. As a scholar, Hyun Seo has studied countless martial arts books. Compared to the average master, his knowledge seems limitless. Dam Ho followed his teacher's instructions and took the pill in the morning every day. Using the heavenly cultivation technique, the days flew by for him like an instant. A month passed and Dam Ho began to show the first signs of renewed strength. The master, as usual, was sitting by the kettle in the yard, pondering his next steps. When Dam Ho left the house, Master asked how he was doing. With a smile, Dam Ho replied that he could walk on his own. The master said he would find a martial art that would be most suitable for his body. He explained that ordinary styles do not suit him, so he will have to create a unique martial art especially for him. First, you need to develop techniques that are suitable for his injured leg. Active use of legs is not available to him, so standard methods are useless. Dam Ho was aware that he would not be able to master anything too difficult with his foot. But Hyun Seo assured that it would only be a challenge that could be overcome, and took the stone in his hands. He gathered a small pile of rocks and placed them on the table, explaining that the moves that would provide stability could become the basis of his martial art. The master asked to imagine that these stones are an impregnable wall. Pointing to one of the stones, he said, "This wall is your enemy. Martial artists who have perfected their styles are as strong as a fortress." He asked Dam Ho how he was going to defeat such opponents. Dam Ho confidently replied that he had to break them by force. That was the only method available to him. "But that's the wrong approach," the master replied, refuting Dam Ho's idea. "The answer is speed. If it is high enough, then the enemy's power becomes useless. A battering ram used to break down castle walls during a siege. Dam Ho's leg movements should resemble that of a battering ram. He should move incredibly fast, concentrating all his strength in one point. It is necessary to develop such a technique of leg movements. This is what it means to conquer change through simplicity," said the master, explaining the essence of the idea. He called this technique attack steps. They do not require any excessive movements. His legs should become a support capable of withstanding great force. Dam Ho began to gradually master this technique of attacking steps, and his efforts began to bear the first results. After a while, they found themselves near a huge boulder. From that day on, they were supposed to stay away from people. Among the famous forbidden martial arts is a technique known as Hayeolchonggak. This art was created by a demon that roamed Gangho 20 years ago. Drawing a circle on the boulder, the master explained that the demon displayed such incredible power that it was said that his blow turned the sky red. He drew a line on the ground and explained that the demon didn't even hide his connections, eventually becoming Ganho's #1 enemy. At that time, hundreds of experienced martial artists joined forces to meet him and defeat him. But he dealt with them mercilessly. After that, he disappeared from society, never to return. In the end, he became a myth, forgotten by most people who thought he left in a huff after that battle. But in reality, everything was different. Instead of avoiding Gangho's people, he disappeared because the great sword king of Manhua, Sancheongjia, intervened. Like Ugyompe, He was one of the world's 10 heavenly masters, and they decided to determine which of them was the best in swordsmanship. They fought day and night, causing the whole world to tremble with their battle. Finally, Sun won by half a second. If Ugyonpei hadn't used his inner energy to escape from the other masters, even Sun wouldn't have been able to defeat him. He was that powerful. He wanted to destroy the book, but after looking at its contents, he changed his mind. Although the knowledge in it could be used by evil people like Ugyonpei, the martial arts described in it were impressive. Then, having no other choice, he hid the book from the public, handing it over to scientists. This is how this book ended up in the hands of scholars, and this story has brought them to the present time. By studying this knowledge and experimenting with it, you can create an ideal form of attacking moves. After hearing this, Dam Ho asked the teacher what he should do now. The teacher explained that from this day on, this would become his task. He must reach the mark on the boulder in just one step. The distance to the boulder was about 20 feet, or about 6 meters. Dam Ho judged this distance to be too far for even a martial artist to cover in one jump. Since the left leg had to be used for the jump, the master drew a line. He explained that Dam Ho could not leave this line under any circumstances. Master understood that such a distance seemed impossible for the human body, but Dam Ho had to do it. Even though he is a cripple with an injured leg, successfully completing the training will leave his body feeling perfect. At this point, the master ordered him to begin. Dam Ho, finding support under his foot, pushed off and flew forward. But, as they say, the first pancake is lousy. It landed unsuccessfully on the leg. Master noted that this only confirmed that his body was leaning to the left. Was told to start over to adjust my stance. Dam Ho pushed off the ground again, preparing for another jump. He jumped, but failed again. Getting up after falling, he pushed himself off the ground with his fist, repeating the attempt again and again. The distance to the boulder seemed too great and almost insurmountable. To be honest, he even began to doubt whether he was capable of doing it. The master only explained that his task now was to jump to the boulder again and again, regardless of the difficulty. Of course, Dam Ho agreed and said he would do it as many times as he wanted. Day after day he jumped to the boulder again and again, training his body and spirit. At first his fist was too far to reach the boulder, and it deviated from the line on the ground. It only took 1 month to move in the right direction. After that, he began to notice an improvement in his approach to the boulder, and from then on, real hell began. Hitting the ground with the damaged leg brought unbearable pain. It seemed that the muscles were tearing into pieces. Jumping 10 feet took another month of hard work, and it took him another 2 months to cover the last 10 feet. And so the day came, to which he had been walking for so long. Dam Ho finally reached the mark painted on the boulder. He finally got over the first step, but he understood that simply reaching for the boulder was not enough. It was necessary to do it faster and with more force. He needs speed and inner strength enough to break this boulder. At this time, a group of merchants from Bukro were returning to Moi after a successful trade in the West. The group was formed by Oh Seong-gyun, who had studied martial arts in the Mudan sect 30 years ago and had built an excellent reputation since then. They were in a hurry to reach Hamsuksun in 10 days. Some helped push the load on the cart to ease the burden on the horses. Spring was already approaching, and flowers were blooming in Jongwon. The two men talked about it while admiring the first signs of spring. They confessed that they were already homesick, since it had been 11 months since they left their homes. They couldn't wait to smell the smells of their home again and hug their women. But not everything was so safe, because an ambush was waiting for them behind the bushes. One of them ordered everyone to be careful and prepare their weapons. However, within a moment, their blood was flying in different directions. One of the comrades was killed right in front of the other. He ordered to defend against the enemy and protect the cargo. Then the captain asked who sent the attackers. One of the men replied that they did not know who exactly was in front of them, but they turned out to be very skilled. "I am Oh Sung-kyung, Mudan inner disciple and leader of the Bukro delivery team." He introduced himself to the enemies. He turned to the attackers, asking who they thought they were to attack Bukro's delivery team like that. The man with the tattoo on his shoulder mockingly asked if Oh Sung-kyung was proud of being a member of the Mudang sect. Oh Sung-kyung felt that they were being treated like trash, and this made him indignant. He could tolerate insults directed at him, but he would not allow anyone to insult the Mudan sect. The painted man said that Oh Sung-kyung's pride in Mudang looks ridiculous. Then he pushed himself off the ground and rushed towards them. "Your sect turned on its tail after confronting us," he exclaimed contemptuously. 30 years have passed since the world believed they were destroyed. The man pointed to the tattoo on his shoulder, a world-famous demon mark that looks like an explosion of fireworks, and asked if Oh Sung-kyun still didn't understand who he was dealing with. Oh, Sung Kyung saw that this firework was shaped like a flower, and then he understood. In front of him is a demonic practitioner. The man smiled in satisfaction, glad that Song now understood who he was, and asked if he understood why he said that the Mudan sect feared them. Sun did not believe that he was facing a real demonic practitioner, but he decided to prove it by killing him. He ordered his men behind him to reveal who they really were. Sun ordered his men to prepare for battle. He pointed at the enemies, calling them the bastards who turned Jungwon into a sea of blood 20 years ago. Sun was determined to stop them here and now, no matter what. Then he turned to his friend McEwen. Sun decided to take care of everything himself, asking McWen to survive and return home. But McVen proudly raised his sword and said he would fight by his side until the end. However, Song understood that if he was indeed a part of the demonic sect, then everyone would have to die here. He begged McWen to survive and tell everything in Jungwon, because only he had a chance to return alive. It was the captain's last request, and though McEwen accepted it with bitter tears, he was ready to fulfill it. An incredible number of terrible events happened that day. The Bukro delivery group and its influence disappeared from the face of the earth. At this time, Dam Ho continued his training. A powerful enemy to be defeated, he repeated to himself during training. His enemy was this boulder, which he intended to destroy today. Today he aspired to become a new man, reborn through strength and will. Concentrating all the strength in his hands, he set himself up for a jump. Then he gathered all the strength in his legs and pushed off. He had to move straight to the boulder like a battering ram. As he approached, he quietly said, "Piercing fist." To break through the obstacle in one moment is his goal. He hit the target with all his might. The stone began to crack, and small stones flew all around. His hand went deeper and deeper into the boulder. Finally, he was able to do it. A loud crack spread around. The stone split. Behind him stood the master, who said that his hard work and tears over the past year had not been in vain. He placed his hand on Dam Ho's shoulder, adding that he had been trying incredibly hard all this time. Master understood how much effort Dam Ho had put in more than anyone else. However, he also reminded him that this level was only the beginning of what others were already at, and asked him not to let it cloud his mind. Dam Ho understood this, and even such a success was significant to him. At that moment, the master noticed how a special aura began to form around him. Master guessed what he was thinking. Dam Ho thought that he would never allow himself to be humiliated again. The master felt that his faith would only grow stronger, and he felt that he could turn Dam Ho into a real monster. Jung Moonin ordered that Hyun Seo not teach him any of the martial arts of Manhwa, but the right art for Dam Ho was not there, so Hyun did not disobey the order. It was his only decision, because Dam Ho is his only disciple, and everything he does is done for him. No one had climbed these mountains in the past year, and it was obvious that the elders would not either. Dam Ho is not a helpless disciple in need of pity. He will undoubtedly become a treasure of Mount Hua. Hyun Seo didn't hold a grudge against the senior master. Knowing that he had gone off to study in seclusion with his new student, Myung-gyeon, Hyun also didn't expect to be able to make Myung-gyeon the pillar of Mount Hua. The next day came quickly. Dam Ho climbed up, thinking that even more effort was needed. He realized that if he wants to succeed, he needs to work even harder. Even incomplete equipment in a real battle will not be useful. There is still a long way to go. Suddenly, Vaughn appeared behind him, addressing him. Dam Ho humbly greeted his elder brother. When Dam Ho asked what happened, one replied that Chang Moonin had ordered his teacher to be brought to him. Then Dam Ho went to the elder. He ordered her to wait there. One still felt a tremor as he met Dam Ho's gaze. He didn't understand why he was becoming so shy in front of his elder, although it seemed strange. And he did not understand how Dam Ho, who was supposed to remain in a coma for the rest of his life, got back on his feet. Who came? Came from behind the door. Von Yul introduced himself and greeted the master. "Why did you come here?" asked the master. Wang replied that Chang Moonin had ordered him to bring him. "And for what reason does he need me?" the master continued to ask. One didn't know the reason. He just had to bring him to Chang Moonin. Since Hyeon was part of Mount Hua, he could not ignore this order. Dam Ho decided to accompany him. It had been 5 years since Hayun had last seen this view, standing in front of the beautiful scenery. He said that the world had not changed at all, unlike his heart. He explained to one that he would first go to the Chuan Palace and asked Dam Ho to follow him. They were already getting closer when Mu Kyung and Ong Kyung appeared in front of them. They were very surprised when they saw him. They began to discuss among themselves what they had heard, as if he would not even be able to walk, and they immediately asked him how he ended up here. Mu was embarrassed that Dam Ho hadn't visited him all last year. He then asked how his health was, To which Dam Ho replied that he was much better. Dam Ho also added that it was all thanks to the master. Suddenly, a woman's voice rang out from behind him. "I presume you are a disciple of Manhwa," she said. She was a girl with a slightly cheerful appearance, but a special cuteness emanated from her. Her name was Yeon Soha, and she was from the Mudan sect. She arrived here with her master. The girl asked Dam Ho if he was also a disciple of Manhwa. Mu then replied that he was one of Manhwa's best disciples. However, she suspected something because she could not feel the ka produced by Manhwa's martial arts. Mu explained to Dam Ho that they were guests from the Mudan sect, to which Dam Ho asked the reason for their visit. However, Mu also did not know because they had arrived so unexpectedly. She guessed they expected her to answer the question herself. But this was not the kind of thing that could be discussed. At this time, in the inner garden of Chueon Palace, Hyun Seo approached Jang Moonin and asked why he was called. He explained who was sitting third next to them, namely Jeon Ho Chinin of the Mudan sect. They introduced themselves and Young Ho said his name. He said that if Chang Mooning is older than him, then his strength must be incredible. But he replied that, as a scholar, he did not have much power, and asked what was the purpose of Young Ho coming to Manhwa. Young Ho apologized for his rudeness and explained that he came to ask for help from Manhwa. "Do you need the people from Manhwa?" Hyun asked him. "Yes, we desperately need them," Young Ho replied. Hyun then asked what had happened that they were asking for help so persistently. Young Ho started to tell what happened, but suddenly, Chang Moonin himself intervened and said that they had discovered the disciples of the demonic sect. "And if that's true, we're all in grave danger," he added. Hyun understood perfectly who the demonic sect was. "Is this really a demonic sect?" Hyun asked, to which Young Ho replied that it needed to be checked. He added that they could not announce the return of the demonic sect with only a scrap of paper to confirm their attack. They just needed help, because this place is the closest to Pyogak, which was destroyed. Young Ho also revealed that the Yeongnam sect had sent people to support the case. Young Moonin moved closer to Hyun and explained that Young Ho had come to convey the Mudan sect's request to gather disciples. However, Hyun did not understand why he was called. "You must go with them," Chang Moonin told him. After all, the knowledge and memories that Hyun possesses are something that many others do not have. "And even if you're not a martial artist, your insight is incredible," Chang Moonin continued. "You can distinguish their tracks from others." Hyun himself understood that he would not be able to forget this knowledge just like that. For Young Ho, this conversation was a real relief. He believed that the Manhwa sect, which had always fought valiantly against demons, knew more about the demon sect than anyone else. However, Hyun had one condition. He must be allowed to take a disciple with him on this journey. That was his only condition he voiced. After a short pause, Young Ho's request was confirmed and they all headed forward together. All he asked was to follow him. From time to time he stopped, fascinated by the incredible scenery of Manhwa. The girl walking behind Dam Ho noticed him dragging his leg. Is she injured? Thoughts swirled in her head. Even with a strong body, reaching a high position in the world of martial arts is more difficult than passing through the eye of a needle. This is what this world is like. And occupying a high position with a crippled leg is even more difficult. Eventually, they reached Hyun Seo's house. He offered to bring something to eat, asking them to sit down and wait. Instead, he took a flask from his inside pocket, saying that the scenery was beautiful and the wind was pleasant. So why food? "That's enough," he said, holding the alcohol right in front of Hyun's face, who of course refused. "We're not drinking, we're enjoying nature," Chongo replied with a smile. It was a kind of test. Meanwhile, Dam was walking beside Sue, who was begging for her teacher. She then asked when he joined Manhwa. In response, he remembered that it happened 6 years ago. It seemed to her that it was very recently, but at the same time, she had the feeling that he felt lonely, staying here alone in this lonely place. However, he assured her that everything was fine because his teacher was always there. During the conversation, she noticed that the relationship between him and Manhwa did not look ideal at all. He and Hyun seemed to be spending time alone without the other students. And against this background, only praises about great alcohol sounded. Coming closer, Dam saw that his teacher was already holding a bottle of alcohol. It seems that he could not deny himself, and his eyes were already shining like a mirror. The lady only asked if he was okay. The master answered in surprise, asking why everything was spinning around. And immediately after that, he started to fall. Young-ho didn't understand anything, because it seemed like he didn't drink much. Only 3 sips and already such a reaction. The lady took him on her back to carry him inside. Sue also asked her teacher, So, to cut down on his alcohol consumption. The master turned and walked away, explaining that it was time to clear the mind. and then he asked his student what she thought of Dam Ho. She replied that he seemed quite normal to her. The word normal really surprised Jung-ho. She explained that his crippled leg is just a detail, but his personality seems a bit cold and doesn't seem threatening. After listening to her, he called her naive, then asked her to look to the side and asked if she could see what he was showing. A small target was drawn on a large boulder, at the height of a man. He pointed to the effects of the strike that remained on this target, and the footprints found only 20 feet from the boulder cannot be ignored, even with those directly in front of them. Jung-ho explained that Dam Ho was not the child who needed help like she thought. He added that one should not sympathize with someone who has trained more than 10,000 times. The power of MANHUA is as vast as it is profound. She wondered if it was really possible to practice 10,000 times. It seemed incredible to her. And at the same time, she wondered why she hadn't noticed this obvious fact until now. All because she focused only on his leg and his lameness. Usually, when she meets martial artists of the Mudan sect, she observes them closely and can easily identify their fighting style. Looking at this boulder now, she understood why the teacher had brought her here. Meanwhile, behind the Rocky Mountains, Chuan Palace rose. Everyone was in a hurry to prepare because the departure was already approaching. Several disciples lined up in front of the elder, preparing to accompany him on his way. Muken and Ongen assured that they would protect him. Just imagine that on a journey where unseen dangers may await them. They are ordered to accompany him. Because of this, Hyun-chan considered the elder to be very considerate and circumspect in this matter. Ching himself was willing to do anything for the welfare of Mount Hua. At that moment, the master asked Dam Ho to come to him. He stood behind him and took a few steps forward. Zdrovan frowned and asked if he was going to go with them too. Dam Ho approached the elder and expressed his desire to go on this journey. Zdrovan turned to the master, explaining that it was too dangerous and it was better to leave Dam Ho here. He added that it would be difficult for them to follow both if something went wrong. Mu immediately calmed the healthy man, explaining that such words are unacceptable in the presence of an elder. But he insisted that he was only telling the truth. The master, unwilling to listen to these arguments, announced that the time had come. Everyone got ready to go. Their next stop was Cheongnan. Without rest, they set out on the road. The group that Hyun was accompanying had already arrived at Yonggangjang. It was here that they were to meet with representatives of the Cheonam sect. This place had a connection with the Mudan sect because there was an incident that left the owner of Yongganjan indebted to them. Jung-ho explained that they cooperated with them because of this debt. Mu realized that Yonggangjang had once been under the rule of Mount Hua, and he couldn't even imagine that another sect would set up their post here. Mount Hua's influence has weakened too much, the big man said, and the two decided to move on. They got to know each other, exchanging greetings. Jungwon introduced himself and greeted Jung-ho's older brother. "Are you the one in charge of affairs in the Cheonam sect?" Chango asked. Afterwards, he thanked him for how well everything had been organized. Sitting around the tables, some people were discussing the arrival of the great martial artist of the Mudan sect, who was considered to be the greatest swordsman in the Hubei region, Jonghae Chinin. At that moment, Jungwon walked in and told them that they should come out to greet him. They went outside and bowed low, greeting the master. It was a great honor for them to be able to greet the greatest swordsman of the Mudan sect. The blindfolded man said that he looked forward to learning from him in the future, but he replied that it was not a merit worthy of praise. He then introduced them to Hyun Seo and introduced the others. During the introduction, he said that Chongho came from Mount Hua, a sect known for their harshness that settled in Shaanxi, where they operated in a similar manner. The man with the blindfold was called Junhwa. He expressed that he was glad to meet you. Another introduced himself as Gim Hansu. Gum and Mu exchanged glances. Gum knew that before him was the best disciple of Mount Hua, and Mu understood that this person was the hope of the Cheonam sect. At this moment, Jeongwon remarked that it was time to end the acquaintance. He turned to the elders, suggesting that they leave the youth alone and drink themselves. After all, they became friends who will travel together from now on. Him, understanding the importance of finding a common language, offered everyone to drink a glass. Meanwhile, as the conversation between them continued, Dam gazed at Mount Thebek, whose majesty could be seen from afar. His heart was racing because he was back here again. This excitement could be seen on his face. The master also noticed this and warned that if he passed by this place, he might later regret it. They had some time, so he advised Dam to take advantage of it while they could. The lady thanked him for the chance and promised not to be late and to return as soon as possible. The lady was walking towards the gate, and Soka noticed it. She immediately approached him and asked where he was going. He didn't answer, so she asked if he was okay. The lady turned and asked what she meant. She assumed that he was upset that he had not been invited to the table. But the matter was different. If he was embarrassed to stay here, She suggested he go to the Mudan sect, as they had also reserved an inn there. He thanked her, but explained that he had business that needed finishing. So he headed for the gate and exited the grounds. The guard standing there also asked why he was going out and if anything was bothering him. The lady made a request, asking if there was a horse he could take. He asked if he was allowed to use the horse. The guard agreed without hesitation, because the master ordered to help them by all possible means. He showed him 2 horses and asked him to return before night. As he mounted his horse and headed uphill, Dam remembered how his father had always told him to look for Mount Thebek as a landmark to find his way home if he ever got lost. It was his first time riding a horse, and he was orienting himself to the majestic mountain in front of him. There was no hint of fear in Dam Ho's eyes. Some time passed, and he found himself among the trees growing on the mountain slopes. He lightly patted the horse on the neck, saying that it was well done. Driving along a nameless mountain path, he stroked the horse and asked him to wait here. This place was filled with memories of him following his father everywhere. Many years passed, but Dam remembered even the trees that grew on both sides of the road. Leaves rustled under his feet as he crouched down and touched it with his hand. From a small cliff he looked down. Everything in front of him was covered with grass and ruins. But people once lived here. Silhouettes of his father and mother appeared in his imagination. His breathing became more frequent. His heart pounded. Without holding back his tears, he whispered, "Dam Ho has returned home." Internal pain made him fall to his knees. Clenching his fist, he still couldn't understand. He did not understand why his father had to die. Why, when more than 100 people were killed, no one cared. No one even tried to find out who was behind it. Sitting in this place, Dame promised herself never to forget it and keep it in her heart. The horse's hooves pounded the ground, and everyone hurried to reach the pass as quickly as possible. They went forward, spurring their horses. The Mudan sect had already prepared the way. All that remained was to hurry to Yeoman Pass. It was a haven for weary travelers. Dam Ho was sitting on a horse with the others just in front of the entrance. But they were warned to be careful even in the hotel because the Magyo clan was already very close. They were told that they might not return home for 6 months or even a year after they left that place. And with luck, there might be no return at all. This was the gate between Zhongnyeon and the outside world. At that moment, Young-ho approached Hyun and said that they should meet whoever sent the letter from that area. However, he also noted that contact with him had been lost since the last letter. Young-ho hoped that he would lead them to the city where the battle with Magyo took place. He added that students should be allowed to rest. Since the future was uncertain, Hyun suggested that everyone take a break. The 2 Jung-ho fighters sat down and began to discuss how Dam had become one of the best students with a body like that. One of them remarked that on MANHUA he is still called the limping mongrel. In other words, he's a dog that can't run. And one of the fighters just hoped Dam wouldn't mess anything up. At that moment, Hyun was climbing the stairs with Dam-ho. The master explained to him that this world is too cruel when others are judged only by their appearance. It is frightening. "Sorry, it's all because of me," Dam said. Hyun replied, "I'm so weak that I couldn't help you." He felt that even here he was treated with hostility because of this. Master knew it was time to make a decision that would allow Dam Ho to move forward. He addressed him, saying that Mount Hua was high enough to touch the heavens, but not wide enough to embrace him. Master recognized that he had no choice but to stay on Mount Hua whether he wanted to or not. But Dame is different. Dam listened attentively to every word of the teacher. He continued and asked, "What if Mount Hua rejects you?" He said that in that case, Dame would have no reason to remain faithful to her. After completing this journey, he asked him to go explore the world. Dame could not believe that she was hearing such words from her master, and he emphasized once again that Dam should strive for freedom. "Mount Hua is Mount Hua, and you are you. Come back when you have an unshakable determination that even the strong gusts of Mount Hua cannot break. Then we can drink together," the master told him. Their conversation ended, and the next day came. Young-ho walked into the seemingly empty barn. However, while there, he uttered, "I know you're watching me." Then he said his name, "I am Jong-ho of the Mudan sect." He assured that there was no need to be afraid and asked him to just leave. Suddenly, there was a faint rustling sound behind him. Jong-ho instantly turned his head in that direction. A man appeared there and Young-ho asked if he was okay. His eye was bandaged, and his whole body was covered with scratches. He said only that none of his allies survived. Young-ho put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Thank God, at least you're alive." The man explained that they were monitoring an enemy base. Clenching the sword in his hand, Young-ho asked if he was sure that these were the remnants of the demon clan. Gritting his teeth, he told how he had heard that they had mentioned a cult. He added that only the Magyo clan could utter such words in the Gangho lands. Everyone at the North Road Agency had died, and he begged Young-ho to give him a chance to avenge them. He shouted at the top of his lungs, begging his master to give him this chance. Meanwhile, the big man ran to Hyun. Opening the door, he announced that Jong-ho's master had ordered to prepare for battle and perform. Hyung was immediately surprised because it seemed strange at the time. But the big man repeated Jong-ho's words, noting that it was very urgent. Master immediately asked Dam-ho to prepare for departure. Storwan turned to Dam-ho and asked if he should stay so as not to burden the group. He believed that he could only get in the way, so he advised to stay together with everyone. But Ho couldn't let his teacher take the risk alone. Although the big man considered him a stubborn young man, he nevertheless agreed with him. If he is so sure of himself, he asked to be careful. For the first time, Dam took these words as a real instruction from an elder. He swallowed the lump of saliva that had gathered in his mouth, and after some time they set off along the mountain paths. Driving the horses, they ordered them to jump faster. They knew the location of the enemy base and where they were going. They were in the Red Wildlands beyond Yeoman Pass. Their mission was to leave Yeoman Pass before the enemy spotted them. This place at the top, this gorge, was called Locked Hell. Nwegon came to the boss with the news that the tail was following them. He explained that it was probably because of the last battle. It became known that among the people of the escort agency of the Northern Road there was a survivor. "Didn't Captain Jong say he would take care of it?" asked the boss. After that, he specified who exactly was persecuting them. "Mudan sect, Manhwa, and Chonam," Nwegon replied. The boss realized that if 3 of the 9 major sects were chasing them, it could mean that they would all be mobilizing soon. As soon as the 9 great sects mobilize, the 5 great families will join them, followed by the whole world. He realized that they did not have the strength to face the whole world right now, so he decided that it was better for them to leave. Nwegon asked in surprise if he was really going to leave Locked Hell. The boss understood that eventually they would have to do it. The only difference is that now it has to be done earlier than expected. However, even when leaving this place, they must prepare a special gift for the guests. Their guests were already right in front of their cave. Young-ho dismounted, convinced that there were clear signs that this place was inhabited. The fact that the surroundings were so clean only indicated the caution of their enemies. The roads here were dangerous, so Young-ho ordered everyone to continue on foot. Suddenly, 2 soldiers announced that they had found something. They were sure that they had come across the tracks of a wagon. In a moment, everyone else gathered around them, examining the find. "Is it really Magyo?" There was only one question in which they were almost 90% sure. Mu then ordered Dam-ho to protect the teacher with the other students. He asked the host to leave as soon as it was confirmed that it was Magyo. Hyun-seo was doubtful. But Mu explained that this was an order from his master and asked him to leave the fight to the Mudang sect, making safety a priority. As a commander, Mu said that when the battle starts, there is no need to be shy about running away. Hyun-seo agreed with his words, even though he didn't really like it. Others were filled with admiration. Everyone was eager to show their worth, hoping to make their names known throughout the land of Gangho. One of them was boasting that he could kill the Magyo leader with one blow when the other heard a strange sound. The sound resembled the whistling of air. Gifts from Magyo were flying in their direction. One of the students was felled by a razor-sharp blade that hit him directly. It became clear that it was an ambush. Everyone was told to be careful. When they realized it was a trap, they were ordered to lie on the ground. The problem is that not everyone had time to do it. Another fighter fell right in front of them. Ho turned around and asked Young-ho what to do. Seeing the group of people, Young-ho ordered his men to stay calm. Ahead of them stood Nwegon, laughing eerily. Jung-ho asked the soldier who had seen them before if these people were definitely from Magyo. He answered without hesitation that it was them, recognizing them immediately. Enemies attacked them and took away their goods. The fire of revenge for his brothers was kindled in him. Nwegon calmly laughed at the actions of the man who rushed into battle. Jung-ho, realizing that he couldn't be let go alone, ordered the others to follow him. They were ordered not to spare their enemies and part with them once and for all. All as one rushed forward, clutching weapons in their hands. The first was a fighter who, despite the loss of an arm in a previous battle, was eager for revenge. However, the enemies were not going to leave their swords aside either. Mu stood in front. Behind him was Vongyol, whom he asked to protect Dam-ho and his companions. He warned that the master must stay alive. At the same moment, the representatives of Magyo were eager to show their power. The battle was heating up more and more, and Mu was ready for the inevitable, to kill. But one thing worried him, the anxiety that was growing in him. He prayed to God as he went into battle. Mu begged for forgiveness for these murders, because all this was for the sake of peace in Gangho. The representatives of the demonic cult were confident in their abilities. They believed that death is the only thing that awaits those who stand in their way. Mu fought back one after another with a steadfast face. Suddenly, the enemy appeared from the other side. By scattering them, Mu saw it as an opportunity to show that MANHUA was still capable of something great. He did this in order for MANHUA to regain its lost influence. Blood splattered all around, leaving bloody trails. With a steadfast face, he confidently moved forward. "This is the sword of MANHUA. This is her real power." Among the fighters, Master Chongho displayed incredible swordsmanship as expected from Hubei's strongest swordsman. Every time he swung his sword, someone fell to the ground. The lines left by his blows in the air were remarkably even and smooth. At the same time, they were deadly, forcing the enemy to stay in line. His stance radiated courage and strength. Although Magyu are dangerous, Zhongyuan still has its elite. Yonghua, as the commander, ordered Geum to clear the way. He couldn't let the Chanam sect fall behind. Him immediately rushed to carry out the order. He did it with complete dedication, just as his commander fought against the enemy. Showing the power of his divine water blade to his enemies, he acted without remorse. Even in battle, he told his enemies that if they wanted to survive, it was better to run away from here. There was no room for mercy in Cheongnam. Zhenhua proved this by simply chopping off his opponent's leg. The battle was gaining momentum, and orders were already being given not to leave anyone alive. Damho clenched his fist with determination. He was asked to leave, assuring that the students would protect the master. He was ordered to retreat with the master and ensure his safety. He wanted to show his skill this time. He decided to defend the master in the name of MANHUA against this mob of merciless killers. The battle had reached an unheard-of scale, and the gorge was becoming more and more bloody. But suddenly a mysterious figure appears. Her energy was felt by everyone around her. It was incredibly powerful. Damho also took note of this. "Who is this?" others began to ask, full of curiosity. Some even swallowed saliva from cold fear. The creepiness of this approaching figure was overwhelming. The disciples were ordered to hold their positions and gathered into the seven-star blade formation. But it seemed that the stranger did not care about this. He simply charged at the crowd in front of him, aiming his swords at the enemies. As soon as he got close, incredible heat began to emanate from his hand. This heat was the radiation of his energy that he used to attack. It was simply impossible to withstand these blows. He knocked down one after another, as if nothing could stop him. Everyone who got in his way saw only the incredibly fast movements of his hands. He controlled his body with such skill that it seemed to obey his every intention. He only scattered the enemies, leaving them lying face down on the ground. Even though he was trembling, he held the sword firmly in his hands. He tried to hit the opponent, but missed. His feet pushed off the ground and he flew up. The stranger was preparing to attack from above. He just watched as it quickly approached. But suddenly, a familiar rack appeared in front of him, honed near a large boulder. "Von Joel, calm down," said a voice. And after that, Damho punched the enemy with all his might. It was the piercing blow of the one whom everyone on Mount Hua considered a cripple, the one in whom no one believed. Damho performed an incredible kick that sent energy all around. One, falling to the ground, stammered in surprise, "Brother!" All the students watching this were equally stunned. None of them could fathom how he was able to perform such a powerful technique. Damho began to approach the enemy. The stranger himself did not understand how anyone could stop his attack. From under his mask, Dame heard a woman's voice say angrily, "How dare you!" She pushed off the ground, and concentrating even more ki in her hand, flew straight at Damho. Master Haiyan shouted to the disciple to be more careful. It was Magyo's flaming fist of dusk. Her movements doubled in her eyes, and she was already quite close to Dam. Damho set up a block with each blow, deftly maneuvering his hands. However, the pressure from her side was simply incredible. Behind his back, the master remembered that 20 years had passed, but he was sure. Many people of Mount Hua died from this technique. The other students were hearing about Magyo's burning fist of dusk for the first time, but now they saw it with their own eyes. Because of this powerful energy, Dam almost couldn't see anything in front of her. He was blinded, but he mustered the strength to focus and parry the blows. Watching them, it seemed as if there were hundreds of them on the battlefield, so fast were their movements. Despite the lightning moves, Dam continued to put up a block. The stones under their feet flew in different directions from the incredible force of the blows. The others just watched, understanding that it was better not to interfere in the battle, so as not to interfere. They wondered how the lady managed to block such blows. Is Dame currently using the Fist of Bamboo Sheets technique? Wang knew that every disciple of Mount Hua was learning this technique. But the bamboo leaf fist he knew was weaker. He wasn't strong enough to withstand Magyo's sophisticated arts, especially since Dam Ho had a crippled leg. It even made him an outcast on Mount Hua. And yet he dodges, parries, and counters Flaming Fist of Dusk. He asked himself, has Dame been hiding her true power all this time? But while he was thinking, the fight continued, and Dam missed a powerful blow to the hull. From the blow, he felt a sour taste in his mouth rising from his stomach. However, he stood on one leg, keeping his balance. Vaughn, standing behind him, turned to Dam, asking permission to help. But Dam only looked around and asked everyone to step back. He is not your opponent. Stand behind with teacher, Dam Ho said. His words sounded proud, and Vaughn understood everything. Dam voiced this as an order. As the head disciple of Manhwa, he ordered them to leave the place. It was completely unexpected, and Vaughn was at a loss for words. Hyun refused, saying he wouldn't leave without him. Teacher, I know you never ask me, but please go. I will join you soon. Putting her hand on her heart, Dame made him a promise. He knew that he must fulfill this promise. Hyung finally agreed, believing that he would keep his word. Everyone behind Dam began to retreat, following his order. He was left alone with the opponent, who asked if he was a disciple of Manhwa. The lady answered in the affirmative. Hearing this, she said coldly, "Oh, what a pity." Then Dam asked her if she was with Magyo. She slowly began to lower her mask, saying, "That's what the world really calls us." Lowering her mask, she said that they call themselves Shingyo. She explained that Magyo means cult of evil, while Shingyo means cult of God. Then what is Shingyo doing here? Dam asked. She explained that this place was locked hell, their base, which is also a large prison for sinners. Dam listened attentively to everything she said. It was their last refuge, because there were no others left. But today it was found. She admitted that some of them were planning to take revenge on Zhong Yuan, although not all of them supported the idea. When Dame heard of some, he asked if there were those who did not wish for revenge. "Take that as you will," she replied. Then she asked his name. She explained her curiosity by saying that he would be the first person she would kill, and she wanted to at least know his name. The lady began limping towards her and called her name. "I won't forget you, Dam Ho," she said, calling herself Im Yugyeon. At this moment, she was preparing to demonstrate the final technique of Burning Dusk Fist, Flowing White Lotus. It cannot be said that Dame did not want to see this reception. Like a battering ram smashing through a castle gate, Dam began to move forward. He gained a charging stride, increasing his attack with each movement. He pushed back exactly as he had done thousands of times before the boulder. The heavenly cultivation technique tensed every muscle in his fist. But she approached him just as confidently. Her burning twilight fist was enveloped in powerful energy, and the flowing white lotus strike was no less threatening than the previous one. Dam didn't back down and didn't hold back. He immediately used the piercing fist. They came together so fast that they rushed past each other, each trying to dodge. She was already behind him. The lady looked back. At that moment there was a crack, and he began to cough heavily. He felt his pain, and the feeling was unbearable. Her punch caught him with incredible force as she flew past. But she also looked at her body with no less pain in her eyes. Her body was also in pain. Blood spurted from the wounds that covered her body. She was also coughing from internal injuries. The lady at that moment was already lying on the ground, clenching her teeth in pain. She stood over him, watching. She understood that if the blow had been stronger, her hand would not have been able to withstand it. She had never felt such fear in her life. But now she saw in front of her the one who inspired this fear, and the thought flashed through her head. What a pity that I have to kill him. She even asked for forgiveness, bending down to his face. Hearing this, Dam asked her not to speak as if he was already dead. Looking at him, she saw his eyes full of vitality. Incredible will shone in his eyes. She was surprised that he could even move in such a state. She thought again, sadly, what a pity I have to kill him. The lady was already up, and she turned her attention to the sound she heard. It's already started, she breathed. What started? Dam asked. And at that moment he saw something flying right at him. This something hugged Yugyeon around the waist. She only managed to whisper, "It's time for me," when Wagon appeared on the mountain nearby and quickly pulled her to him. He warned her that it was all over and told her to get out of here as soon as possible. The lady was standing and looking at them, when suddenly she heard a crack. Stones around began to fall from different sides of the gorge. Not far away, Jung-ho realized that they were bombs. A representative of Magyo stood nearby and said, "We will all die here. We still have no place in this world, so we will die together," he added. They crossed their arms and turned to the divine flame of eternity, asking it to set them free. They stated that they are dedicated to this and will be by his side. Jung-ho was stunned, almost speechless, not believing that they were serious. But they continued to pray to the divine flame of eternity for liberation. Their bodies radiated incredible power that lifted the stones beneath their feet, and they were ready to destroy themselves. The disciples and masters realized that the only way out was to flee from here immediately. It was necessary to get up now, without any delay. Mu ordered his brother to lead the disciples to safety. They would have died here if they had stayed for even a second. They had to leave immediately. As Soha ran away, she couldn't stop thinking about Dam Ho. She closed her eyes, whispering, "I'm so sorry." Young Ho, looking back, saw Dam and his condition, but he knew he couldn't help it. Not a moment could be lost, when suddenly the big man saw Dama. He immediately said that it was necessary to save him, but Mu put his hand on his shoulder and replied that it was too late. Zdrovan turned and said that Dam is family for them, and they cannot leave him. Mu objected, saying that Dam was important, but not more important than others, and there was nothing more valuable to him than MANHUA. At the same moment, Mu pulled him by the shoulder, ordering him to get out of here. Zdrovan silently asked Dam's forgiveness, realizing that this was precisely why he did not want him to go with them. He knew that he could not hope for forgiveness from the lady. The lady was left standing on her knees with a bitter realization of the situation. He was overwhelmed by the feeling that he was left all alone to the roar of falling stones around him. The whole mountain was collapsing, and the word hell became a reality for him. The lady was lying, covered with earth and stones. He didn't know how much time had passed. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was excruciating pain. His body seemed to be torn apart. Fortunately, he was able to move despite the pain, but all he saw in front of him was complete darkness. He could not see anything around him. His first words were, "Well, where am I? Who remained and could not get out of here?" The rest of the representatives of the masters and students just looked at the rubble. They were the only ones left from the Mudan sect. Young-ho couldn't believe that the enemies had launched a suicide attack. He clutched his sword in his hand, looking at it with bitter pain. Him tried to find at least something positive, noting that, on the other hand, it was possible to prevent the enemy from gaining strength. Junhwa agreed, saying that it probably wiped out the remaining Magyo members. At that moment, Hyon was standing on another cliff, on his knees, screaming in pain. Behind him, Mu apologized, explaining that they had tried to save Dam, but it was too late. It hurt Zdrovan to hear it. This pain was transmitted to him through the screams of the master. He understood that if it weren't for Dame, they would all be dead long ago. All of them would be buried underground because of their weakness. He could not hold back his tears, but Hyun refused to believe that Dam was dead. He told himself that his boy would not die so easily. He looked down with hope in his eyes. He whispered, "You wouldn't have died so easily." Meanwhile, under the rubble, Dam didn't know how much time had passed since everyone left. It was a real test, but suddenly in front of him, he saw a stone of night glow. They say these things are priceless, but he looked extremely unusual. Is this the work of human hands? Dam thought. Then remembered Yugyeon and realized that this was their base. The lady also remembered the words she had spoken, about how they called themselves Shingyo, not Magyo. He remembered their entire conversation, as they stood facing each other, and his question when he asked her what Shingyo was doing here. She said, "This is the locked hell, our base here, which is also a large prison for Shingyo sinners." Struggling to get up, Dam began to realize where he was. He realized that not a single ray of light penetrated from the outside, and of course there was no access to fresh air. It was clear that getting out of here would not be easy. Fortunately, he could see the way thanks to the night glowstones. Water and food are essential when you are locked in an enclosed area. Since this is Michio's refuge, there must be something here that will allow it to survive. Wandering around, he noticed that this city was much larger than he had imagined. Continuing on, he noticed signs of life. He came across a training hall. After walking around, he examined the entire area. Thanks to past training, Dam managed to regain his strength and somehow stay on his feet. He noticed boxes to his left. He began to pull back the lid of one of them. Inside were small balls that looked like pills, one of which he took in his hand. Bringing it to his nose, he smelled a pleasant smell. This pleased him, although doubts about its edibility could be seen on his face. Apparently, they were kept in storage just in case. There were a lot of them, so this should be enough for a certain time. At that moment, Dame remembered the master's words. All that is needed is an unyielding will, and then the heavens will open their ways. Dam didn't know how much time had passed, a week or a month. Maybe even a whole year has passed. A snake that accidentally got here crawled among the ruins. She let out a barely audible hiss, but her path was cut short when Dam simply crushed her with one hand. Dam thought that at least 5 years had passed since his body seemed to have stopped growing. Although he did not know his age, the fact that he had stopped growing indicated that he was already an adult. Most importantly, despite all the time that had passed, he was still underground. This snake he caught became excellent food for him. The eerie sound of footsteps echoed in the narrow cave, creating an eerie sense of the presence of an unseen guest. It seemed that this sound was coming from under the stones, increasing the tension and sense of danger. The lady walked slowly, taking each step carefully in the cold, semi-darkness. Only the movement of his right foot, which rhythmically touched the ground, leaving the left behind, was clear. His left leg trailed behind his right, adding a strange, disturbing rhythm to his gait. The unusual frequency and rhythm of his steps made his gait even more strange and menacing. Time passed, and the exit continued to be filled with earth and stones cutting off the way back. The cave was cramped and dark, but it didn't matter to Damn Ho. He knew the path by heart. The lady walked this way, thousands of times, memorizing every pebble and every stalactite on the ceiling. He stopped at a cellar where 10,000 gold coins lay hidden by the Magyo warriors, the former masters of this cave. After the mage moved to the closed hell, this place became a storage for martial arts tomes. Of course, they took most of them with them, leaving only the techniques they deemed unnecessary, such as the explosive triple shadow kick and the wide crushing lunge. The lady carefully picked up the book Explosive Triple Shadow Strike, which she had already read thousands of times. Everything related to this technique was already firmly rooted in his memory like an old friend. Damn Ho was pleased that at least something was left to occupy his time, distracting himself from his loneliness. A long time passed, and Damn Ho left for a place even darker than the 10,000 gold coin dungeon. Fragments of boulders lay everywhere, scattered as if they were traces of a former confrontation. They were not destroyed by nature, but by someone's hand, which made an effort to destroy them. A strong gust of wind suddenly pierced the cave, hinting at an empty place behind the stones. The wind was cold, like a demonic whisper that whispered past Damn Ho like a secret warning. Despite the cold that must have pierced him to the bone, Damn Ho's face remained emotionless, as if he was devoid of all feelings. Damn Ho smashed the rocks in front of him, opening the way to the unknown. A new area opened before him, spacious and dark, full of unsolved secrets. In front of him lay a wide, dark lake, about 10 meters deep, so deep that even the stalactites disappeared in its darkness. This meant that the water was leaking somewhere, but its movement was hidden from view. Damn Ho found this place when hunger was eating away at him from the inside, pushing him close to the edge of survival. When the food supplies for the cultivators ran out, he began to eat moss to somehow satisfy his hunger. The hunger was so strong that he even thought about biting off his own hand. After going through blood, sweat, and tears, he finally found this vault. In the dark pond, strange, glowing fish swam with transparent bodies, through which even their bones were visible, like mysterious, ghostly creatures. Damn Ho didn't know how long these fish had been in the pond, or how they got here. The only thing that was important was that these fish evolved by adapting to life in the depths of the cave. He quickly grabbed one of the fish with his hands, deftly catching it in the dark water. Damn Ho began to eat it raw, bit by bit. He tore her body with his teeth, satisfying the hunger that had tormented him for a long time. Only bare bones remained on the ground when he was done. But it turned out that the choice of food was not limited to fish. Sitting on the cold ground, Damn Ho suddenly caught a new sound. His hearing picked up a low, lingering sound approaching. It was a strange, scarab-like beetle that appeared in the dusk of the cave. The beetle, like the fish, emitted light, which made it possible to see it even in the dark. Because the cave was closed, every sound was amplified, reverberating. And when the scarab broke the silence with its movement, at that moment, something else, even stranger, appeared from behind the stones. It was a huge, praying mantis, whose body also glowed like fireflies in the dark. The praying mantis's eyes seemed surprised. It was as if he did not expect to see anyone in this desert darkness. As food was scarce, the insects often competed for survival, which piqued Damn Ho's curiosity about their battle. The praying mantis attacked first, its predatory sickle-like legs swiping mercilessly martial arts style. Without the slightest hesitation, the paw landed directly on the scarab's neck, kissing its victim with a death blow. But the scarab's body bent at an angle, deflecting the attack like a skilled warrior. The scarab's hard carapace parried the blow, neutralizing the mantis's power with a clever defensive maneuver. The battle continued, intensifying the desire of each to defeat the other in the struggle for survival. The praying mantis swung its paws furiously, trying to destroy the opponent with one powerful movement. Suddenly, the scarab opened its wings, adding a new element to its defensive tactics. His wings moved so fast that the human eye would not be able to see them, deflecting the blows of the praying mantis. Damn Ho, watching this battle, was amazed at the perfection of such defensive skill. Even in this cave, while honing his technique, he was rapidly improving his martial arts skills. The underground dungeon, filled with traces of former fights, became the only place for him to rest and train. He slept on a cold tile, forced to keep his blood circulating constantly to withstand the biting cold. The words, "I buried my friend here," were carved on the wall, a reminder of who had been here before. He saw this inscription every time he opened his eyes, as a silent companion of his loneliness. Dam Ho didn't know what happened to whoever left those words, but the only thing he cared about was surviving and getting out of here. Leaving the lair, he descended to the platform and stopped in front of a large boulder that blocked the way like a sentinel. Many dents, traces of former battles and training were visible on the boulder. Until recently, the boulder was as smooth as a mirror surface, but now it is covered with traces of time and effort. The reason for these dents quickly became apparent to Dam Ho, who examined the stone with understanding. The stone flew in all directions, like dry wood cracking under pressure. The punches were not delivered with his right, but with his left foot, demonstrating Dam Ho's skill. And so, gaining speed, he turned this boulder into a pile of debris. Pieces of stone flew in all directions like sharp shards. Heavy screeching echoed off the cave walls, intensifying the sense of danger. Cracks spread further and further across the boulder, engulfing it with each new blow. With each subsequent movement, these cracks became thicker and spread further. Dam Ho's final blow was his fist, and it was the final chord of his attack. The blow was so powerful that the crack went through the entire cave like an echo of destructive force. The boulder cracked like a shell, but Dam Ho's fist remained completely intact. This incredible strike was the result of a combination of a piercing fist, a triple shadow strike, and a devastating lunge step that created a new, extremely powerful technique. The level of his divine cultivation took on new dimensions, merging with Magyo techniques. Despite the great difference, the martial arts of Manhwa and Magyo merged in his hands. His thirst for learning forgotten techniques made him stronger and stronger. The techniques he was learning with Hyun So had changed so much that even Hyun might not recognize them now. The darkness and loneliness made Dam Ho even more gloomy and withdrawn, drawing him into deep thought. He did not know how many blows he had taken to achieve what he so passionately desired. The only thing he had in this cave was time, and he was even glad for it. The desire to crush everything around him grew. The only goal, to make a way out, gave him the strength to move forward. He felt a sense of duty to Mount Hua, but there was not an iota of mercy or righteousness in his battle techniques. The essence of the Magyo techniques completely merged with Dam Ho's techniques, forming a new, dark force. He repeated the blows again and again. It was the only thing that saved his mind from the brink of insanity. And one day it happened. While practicing the strokes, he froze, feeling an incomprehensible sound. He listened, trying to discern the source of the noise. It seemed to be similar to the buzzing of insects, and he was not mistaken. Dozens of wasps appeared near him and began to fly out from all directions. Seeing them, he immediately felt threatened, ready for a possible attack. The wasps did not stop flapping their wings, flying towards him in a relentless rhythm. They flew out of the very hole that he punched in the boulder, awakening the anger and danger of the cave. The situation was critical. It was necessary to act immediately. It was then that he used his techniques against the wasps that filled the space around him. A piercing fist capable of crushing boulders was supposed to destroy them too. But this technique did not work against wasps. They just flew away, picked up by powerful air currents. But every time they were carried away, the wasps instantly returned and bit with new force. They attacked mercilessly. There were so many of them that it seemed that it would not end. Dam Ho gritted his teeth as he endured this excruciating pain that was coursing through his entire body. The wasps stung him incessantly, leaving no place unscathed. It was then that he realized that these wasps are unusual. They are not simple. Are they poisonous? Damn it, are they really poisonous wasps? Flashed through his thoughts. He tried to brush them off his body, but their number was simply countless. Dam Ho made up his mind to run, and he rushed in the opposite direction. Where the water fluctuated, he saw the only way out, to dive. Plunging into the water, he felt relief, albeit temporary. The poison was so strong that it seemed beyond his understanding and endurance. His body writhed in agony, and his eyes were red as if bloodshot. Veins swelled and appeared all over his body, emphasizing his suffering. Dam Ho could bear the pain, and thanks to his incredible fortitude, he held on. But there was one nuance. The itching was unbearable, much worse than the pain itself. Itching and agony consumed him, and he began to count the minutes to his eventual demise. Clenching his teeth, he barely restrained himself from tearing the skin off his body. With all his might, Dam Ho fought the poison seeping into his body. He called these creatures hell wasps, convinced that they came from the depths of hell itself. The problem was that he didn't know how to fight them off at all. No matter how high his martial arts were, it was almost impossible to touch them. He was lucky to have some fish left, but sooner or later, they would run out. The only way out is to find a shield that will help you pass through these deadly insects. A shield that would come in handy in this situation. A shield to stop them is his best defense in this hell. Damn Ho tried again and again to break through this dense swarm of beetles. They were extremely numerous, and their buzzing created an eerie echo. He swung his arms, trying to fight them off with his punches. At first, it seemed that he was successful, but over time these attempts ended in failure. The only salvation for him was water. But every time he faced itching and bites again. Damn Ho pressed his forehead hard against the stone, looking for some comfort. Pain tore through his head, piercing like sharp thorns. His body was covered in blood that kept coming from the endless wounds. Time passed madly fast, as if the cave was eating away at his life. Damn Ho used his piercing fist again, putting all his strength into it. A small part of the insects died from the impact, falling to the ground. But most of the swarm survived and fell upon him like a deadly tsunami. He got into a fighting stance, preparing for the final confrontation. And so he assumed a new pose. His hand, heavy as an anvil, smoothly glided through the air. His movements became soft and fluid, like a dance combining strength and lightness. Damn Ho understood that victory did not require a high level of energy, but only the correct application of the Qinggong technique of the Mudan sect. He came to this after numerous attempts to overcome a swarm of insects. The bugs began to disappear under the influence of the Qinggong technique as he focused the air currents between his fingers. Having created a vacuum, the air began to settle on his hands, forming a trap. Thus, the insects fell into an air trap that directed their movement downstream. Hundreds of beetles gathered in a whirlwind, colliding with each other and with powerful air currents. This movement of the destructive hand, that's how he called the technique created by his own hands. The technique created a vacuum that exploded under pressure, destroying everything around. However, not all insects died from the pressure. Most of the swarm was still alive. With a speed unimaginable to an ordinary person, Damn Ho's body began to move. This was a move to use the Qinggong to its full potential. This is real hell, he felt, gathering all his strength. Meanwhile, the mountains painted an incredibly beautiful landscape on the horizon. Somewhere among these mountains drove a chariot with a banner on which was written, "Silver Stream." They were in a hurry to make it to the stop, which was already nearby. Everyone present was doing their work, preparing for the stop. On top of the cart sat a young man named Jin Bo, next to whom was an older man. The old man asked him if he was having fun, and he replied that the landscape was simply incredible. Everything was so green. Smiling, the old man nodded, agreeing with him. However, in his mind he thought, well, the fool, if his mother was alive, he wouldn't be following his father everywhere. Suddenly, the elder pointed to a place and announced that this is where they would stop. The team was ordered to set up camp right there. They surrounded this area with their carts filled with goods. Meanwhile, Jinbo was talking to his father, who was cooking the barbecue, and his father asked him to bring the utensils and ingredients. Jinbo walked over and picked up the giant frying pan that was needed for cooking. For him, cooking was the best activity on this planet. Soon everything was ready. Special tools for cooking were on the table. "What are we going to eat today?" Jin asked his father. The plan was sweet and sour meat with chili fried beef, and my father decided to add pork to the soup pot. It sounded very appetizing. Jinbo had been traveling with his father for 8 years. He could even boast that he is capable of being a real boss. Later in the conversation, the father mentioned that all root vegetables should be put aside until they return. Finally, they get to the wine shop. You can't wander aimlessly all your life. People were already waiting for them, so father ordered Jin to start cooking. He himself stirred the dish that was being cooked in the cauldron, adding the final touches. With an axe in hand, Jinbo was ready to show off his cooking skills, and immediately began to beautifully cut the ingredients with the grace of a true master. He did it so clearly that everyone around was mesmerized by the sight. Every vegetable sliced by his hand seemed almost perfect. Jinbu dreamed of showing off his skills to everyone. But that could only happen when he and his father finally opened their wine shop. The father noticed his son's joy and asked him if he was really that happy, to which Jinbo replied that opening a wine shop was his dream. "Well, now that we've stopped, I'll teach you how to cook," said the father with a smile. "And I'll be a great boss?" Jinbo asked enthusiastically, to which his father replied, "Yes, of course." But first, his father explained, he needs to meet with a world-class chef. It was from this master that my father learned his culinary skills, which he still retains. Jinbu had a premonition to learn how to cook delicious dishes like his father. He asked if his father promised, to which he replied with a laugh, "Of course." Meanwhile, the others had already smelled the appetizing smell that filled everything around them. The smell was delicious, and there was no doubt that Chef Ban had cooked up something special again. The mustachioed man asked what goodies would be served today. The chef explained that he had decided to cook pork and beef gathered on one of his recent trips. He also took care of specially roasted pork for gourmets. Beef in a sweet and sour chili sauce was served on the table, and the mustached man was dying to taste this unusual dish. Inhaling the aroma, the mustached man turned to Jinbo, saying that he should follow in his father's footsteps. Father walked up to Jin, put a hand on his shoulder, and told him that his intuition was even better than his own. Everyone sat down at the table and enjoyed the delicious food, silently surrendering to the taste sensations. Their conversations were only about how the meat literally melted in their mouths. The swimming silver squad was preparing to be sent the next day. They were still a long way from Yongwon, but they were all determined. Having set out on the road, they remained vigilant, ready for any surprises. Everyone took their place. Jean's father sat next to the riders watching the road. Jean lay in the chariot thinking about how quickly the last year had gone by. He looked forward to the next day when they would finally reach Yongwon. A recipe book lay in front of him because he knew he had to master all the culinary secrets his father had passed down to him. But suddenly the expression on his face changed. Something strange distracted his attention. He even got up from his seat after sitting down, not understanding what kind of strangeness it was. Meanwhile, the riders stopped, staring intently ahead, amazed, because before them was Hell Valley itself. There was a loud explosion that made Jin jump on the spot. He asked his father what was going on, but he too was confused and didn't know what to say. "What the hell is going on here?" muttered the mustached man, looking in the direction of the explosion. Another warrior replied that there seemed to be serious trouble brewing in Hell Valley. He asked the others to stay put, while he himself went to check the situation. Taking Yupo and Chunho with him, he ordered the rest to keep their formation. There was once a Grand Canyon here, which collapsed, turning the area into a plain, now called Hell Valley. Troops and armies passing by always tried to bypass this dangerous valley. And so, on horses, they came to her, amazed by what they saw. The whole valley was razed to the ground like a field after a battle. In front of them rose only lonely rocks that reached into the sky. But suddenly, something extremely unusual caught their eye. A man stood in the middle of the rocks. His muscular back was exposed, and his long dark hair fell to his shoulders. He was breathing calmly, standing with his back to them, as if not noticing their presence. He only slightly turned his head in their direction and looked at them with a cold expression. A strong murderous lust flashed in his eyes instantly. Just looking at him made the warrior feel a shiver run through his whole body. His eyes read, "Just look at me, and I will kill you." "Who are you?" Damho asked as they approached. He, not daring to look Damho in the eye, replied that he was one of the commanders-in-chief of the Flowing Silver House. Damho had never even heard of this house before. He briefly explained where they were from and where they were going. In conversation, they mentioned that their journey leads to the west. Damho was immediately interested in this. Approaching them closer, he apologized for his strange behavior. Soon he was already sitting with them in the chariot accepted for their journey. The mustachioed man looked at him suspiciously and asked the others who he was. He was told that they would tell him later. But for now the only important thing was that they decided to take him with them. Mustache had never seen anyone like him, and the man gave him goosebumps. Damho was in the chariot next to Jinbo. Jin, smiling, begged him to wake up, jokingly calling his name. Damho lay fast asleep and did not respond to his words. As Jean repeated the question over and over, Dame muttered softly, calling him a nagging little boy. Mistress Heng was suddenly awakened, roused from her sleep. Before him stood a smiling boy who called himself Jimbo. Heng wondered for a moment if his name was really Jimbo, so strange did it seem. The boy began to annoy him with his meaningless chatter. Sitting on the chariot, Heng could barely contain his anger. After all, this impudent young man will not let go of him. Actually, Jimbo just wanted to ask if Heng needed anything, but Heng refused. He is only interested in what the boy knows about the mysterious Colin Mag. Hearing this name, Jimbo became alert and his face changed. Looking down, he said they were horrible people he knew all too well. It has been a long time since the Mage Clan disappeared. Jimbo had nothing to tell the young student about them. The boy was approached by an old man who called himself his spiritual mentor. He said that 30 years have passed since the disappearance of the clan of magicians, if his memory serves him well. The old man clarified, perhaps even 32 years have passed. Heng realized that he had spent about 12 years in that cave. He thought he had only been there 5 or 6 years. This means that he is now about 30 years old. He was stunned that he had lost his youth in a cursed cave. 12 years was an absurdity, an injustice. He spent all these years in complete solitude, perhaps to master the techniques to perfection. A faint smile appeared on his face, but his body radiated a dangerous, violent energy. This energy could suppress everything around, caused tremors in the air. People and even animals felt its destructive power. His demonic laugh made everyone afraid. People, hearing this laughter, covered their ears so as not to hear it. They begged Mistress Heng to stop, at least to calm down. However, the devilish aura did not leave him. Jimbo felt an unbearable pressure crushing his consciousness. The mentor was also powerless to help him because he could not resist this influence. Everyone around, seized with horror, covered their ears, and from the hollow sound it seemed to them that the eardrums were about to burst. Only one question raged in the air. Who created this nightmare? And it is clear that this is not just a guy, but a real demon in human form. His energy was so powerful that people believed that death was approaching them. However, the young master did not pay attention to this, radiating incredible strength. Even the battle-hardened warriors could not withstand such pressure and begged him to stop. They shouted from all sides to suppress him at any cost. Everyone begged the hostess for mercy, but his energy remained boundless. And it wasn't until Hung exhaled that the heavy atmosphere eased a little. Relief finally appeared in the souls of those present, and the deep terror subsided. The master calmly got out of the chariot, firmly stepping on the ground. His steps on this road created an atmosphere of ruthless fear. The people who saw him could not control their trembling bodies. They did not understand why this boy was going to a place of darkness. The master reached into his pocket, where the mysterious object lay. He did not take it, but showed it to the man standing before him. He offered to buy this stone, which had great value. The merchant, looking at the stone, realized that he had quartz in front of him. It was a rare and extremely expensive thing that caused admiration. The merchants had never seen such a precious item before. The merchants wanted to at least check if this stone was really real. They understood that this treasure could not be bought for any money, and they could not collect such an amount. However, to take him to the big city of Chang'an, the rich man there could pay at least 10,000 gold. After all, every rich man dreamed of such a rare stone. The merchant smiled slyly, considering whether to kill the boy and take the stone for himself. But Dam Ho watched him carefully, understanding the true value of the stone. He loudly announced that this stone was honestly worth over 30,000 gold coins. Dam Ho pretended not to pay attention. The merchant continued that this stone was a real fortune, and a rich buyer could pay even 100,000. Dam Ho, wanting to make a profit, asked for help selling the stone. The merchant promised to deliver it to Zhongwan, where the sale would be most profitable. Dam Ho asked if the merchant could purchase the stone himself. Hearing this question, the merchant was a little confused. The fact is that he only had 10,000 gold with him, because he was a simple merchant, but with his honor. Dam Ho agreed to sell the stone for that 10,000 gold. The merchant's face changed. In front of him was not a demon but a real angel. Dam Ho was also grateful for the comfortable journey and therefore sold the stone. The merchant offered to celebrate the deal and have dinner together. Jimbo was ordered to prepare dinner for them. After hearing the master's instruction, Jimbo carefully set about the implementation. The merchants, counting the money, wondered, is this demon in trouble if he is selling such a valuable treasure for such an amount? Soon, Jimbo cooked pork and rice, adding some spices. He brought the spices, warning the young master in advance to use them carefully. Jimbo apologized if the dish was not to his liking, and asked him not to be angry. Dam Ho picked up the rice spoon and tasted the first bite. He carefully savored each piece, not believing his senses. It was his first meal in 12 years, and it seemed unreal. When Jimbo asked if he liked it, Dam Ho replied that it was not just delicious. It was flawless, utterly delicious, almost unbelievably delicious. Soon after, the merchants settled with Dam Ho for the jade stone. They can be said to have given away all their money, hoping for a future benefit. After receiving the money, Dam Ho explained that he was leaving it because many people did not support his decision. He asked where the nearest village was. The merchant answered with a trembling voice that to the north of the city of Turfan, and there you can buy a horse. The merchant said that there was a market in the neighborhood where he would be received with joy if he said he came from them. They wished each other a good trip. Dam Ho was about to leave, deciding it was better for him to travel alone. He told the chef to keep developing his skills. The boy was amazed because his cooking was praised for the first time. However, the father was strict because he and his son were different. He explained that if they followed Dam Ho, only suffering would await them. The world of martial arts is unpredictable, cruel, and dangerous. The father remembered that even the boy's mother was a very dangerous person. Jimbo knew it well too, without his father's words. Dam Ho set off across the mountains to find that village. Soon he came to the village of Turfan. He noticed that the village was not prosperous. However, there was at least one decent innkeeper. He noted that the place looked peaceful and quiet. Jimbo knocked on the door of this house. When he entered, people stared in surprise at the dark silhouette of the stranger. One of the local residents felt fear when he looked at him. However, when he showed a silver coin and asked for a room, the attitude changed. The man kindly greeted him. He was only interested in how many days the boy planned to stay, and he asked whether meals should be included in the payment of the room. The young master answered in the affirmative, and he was soon ushered into the room. The man began to describe the pros and cons of this number. He opened the door nearby and showed all the amenities. The room even had a built-in bath, a rarity here. The man added that if the young hostess needed anything, he only had to say. Damho asked for scissors, a knife, and a change of clothes. He bought all this for 1 silver coin. After a long time in the cave, Damho decided to relax. He enjoyed bathing in a luxurious bath. After that, he needed to tidy up and get a haircut. Looking at the knife he was given, he got down to business. Thick hair slowly fell to the floor. He felt refreshed, ready for the next challenge. Damho decided to clean himself up. He even decided to shave, trying to look neat. After shaving and bathing, he felt a slight embarrassment, as if he had rediscovered himself. He has already forgotten what a healthy sleep is. He always dreamed of a good night's sleep, because exhaustion constantly consumed his body. He was restoring his energy in the lotus position. Perhaps even his cultivation methods had changed due to learning the techniques of the mage clan. It wasn't an evolution or an innovation, but Damho called it the dark heart of martial arts because it was born in darkness. He moved and slept, energy accumulating as his inner dark heart activated. In his sleep, he made deep sounds of relaxed sleep. He dreamed of a master who was addressing him. He urged him to go to the volcano, saying that the test would show if he would survive. Damho replied that he would definitely come, but now was not the time. The next morning, he awoke after a long sleep, refreshed and rested. Entering the dining room, the owner of the hotel barely recognized him. The guy was surprisingly handsome. He promised that he would bring him food soon. Damho asked how far it was to Chongong, and when asked by the waiter why he wanted to go there by himself, he answered boldly, "Why not?" Damho explained that he had nothing to fear. However, the owner warned him that it was dangerous there and had heard of numerous gangs and robbers. These bandits attacked travelers or local residents in groups. Therefore, he advised him to visit the local market and stock up on everything he needed. After all, there you can find a lot of useful things that will come in handy during the trip. Damho only asked if it was possible to buy a horse, because he really needed one. The market was full of activity and noise. People came not only for shopping, but also for entertainment. You could find a lot of interesting things. Although everyone tried to attract the young master's attention, Damho was here for one purpose, and the noise of the market seemed strange to him. After years of solitude, everything around seemed strange and incomprehensible. He had only one goal, to find a good horse. Soon a chariot drove past him. Behind it was a stable with the horses he needed. It was here that he could find what he was looking for. Damho walked around the horse market, carefully examining each horse. He noticed one impudent-looking stallion. By strength, this horse could cause envy in others. None of the horses could match this stallion. Other animals were afraid of him. And this was a sign that he was suitable for the young owner. It was exactly the horse he was looking for. When he came closer, the horse immediately accepted him. Damho looked into his eyes and realized that this was exactly the animal he needed. He felt that this choice was perfect, exactly what he needed. It seems that the horse felt it too. Their eyes met, and it was clear that they understood each other. This sight surprised the trader, who had never seen such an instant understanding between horse and man. It was clear that the groom liked the boy, so he immediately brought the saddle. This young man was the one who took care of the horse and knew its habits. If he likes the horse, he may want to buy it. The groom offered the horse for a low price, and Damho could take it. After all, this horse was the wildest in the entire stable, and it was difficult to tame it. No rider could saddle him, so the horse only added to the trouble. But Damho was brave and agreed to buy it for 500 silver coins. "It's very cheap," he said, accepting the deal. The groom put up that price, hoping for a bargain, but it didn't happen, which surprised him. He quickly accepted the money, not even daring to ask for more. The groom had no right to ask for more, even if it was a special horse. When Damho sat in the saddle, the horse would not let anyone even touch him. It seemed that he was bored with idleness. The groom announced that from now on, this horse belonged to the young master. Damho decided to name the horse Hyukwi, which meant black soul. He directed the horse to the east, ordering to move forward. The horse had to follow the route indicated by the new owner. He had to jump quickly, accurately following commands. Hyukwi leapt over the fence in front of him. Damho asked only one thing, that the horse gallop quickly and without stopping. The horse radiated an incredible energy that seemed to awaken a fire in him. He was kept locked up for a long time, limiting his freedom. Damho felt the same way, because he himself was in the captivity of loneliness, but now they have gained freedom together. Together they raced forward in search of new adventures. Driving around the horse and leaving the village behind, Damho moved on. Looking around, he felt a sudden chill of fear. For the first time in a long time, he smelled blood again. Approaching the place, he saw many dead bodies of warriors destroyed in a fierce battle. Their uniforms and markings indicated that they were followers of the House of Poison Silver. A terrible fate befell them, something unspeakably cruel. The bodies of the soldiers were horribly mutilated. With such wounds, no one could survive. It seemed that they were being bullied mercilessly, for no reason. Damho looked at their wounds, trying to figure out if they were the work of bandits. However, the brutality with which this was done knew no bounds. The soldiers were lying on the ground, with incredible injuries. Moving on, he noticed a familiar face. It was Ugwan. Damho picked him up in his arms and tried to draw attention to himself. Ugwan was still breathing, giving hope that he would regain consciousness. The man turned to Damho, explaining that the thugs had kidnapped his son, the same Jinbo. Realizing this, Damho felt his heart swell with rage. Grief reigned all around, and the bodies of mutilated soldiers seemed to be begging for help. The man begged him to save his son, giving his last strength to this request. With his last breaths, he prayed that it would happen. If his son returned alive, he would never forget this rescue. These were his last words, and with them he left this world. Damho looked at his horse Hyukwi, deciding that they would follow the bandits' tracks today. They will punish them for their sins, leaving no chance of escape. After a successful hunt, the bandits returned to their camp, hidden in the mountains, deep in the wilderness. Their astonishment knew no bounds when they found the catstone, a rare gem that brings good luck and is of astonishing quality. If you collect all the treasures from rich houses, even then you will not be able to estimate the true value of this stone. It is worth more than anything they have ever acquired, and no day of their spoils will match this find. But one of the bandits asked what they would say to those from whom this stone was taken. Other robbers, chewing meat, nonchalantly replied that they had warned those people and were already going to them. I mean, if they're gone, what's left for them to do? The man turned and saw the prisoners in the dungeon, who looked horrified. The fat thug gave each of them a cold look. It was clear that the captured people were in despair. One of them, Da Wang, tearfully recalled his father, who was fatally wounded. The robber told his companion to get this junk here, alluding to the captives. He was clearly going to have fun at their expense. His colleague was happy to support this intention. They are ready to do anything for their boss's wedding. The robbers began to choose which of the captives they would take out first. One of them angrily asked why they did this and what they had done to them. "You have already kidnapped us, so at least stop the bullying. We have nothing valuable," he continued. The chief of robbers turned to the brave man. If he still does not understand what awaits him, he will see now. However, the brave man had already seen a lot and tried to understand what this villain would do to him. The leader of the robbers coldly informed the captives that soon buyers would arrive here and they would be sold as slaves. This thought of inevitable slavery filled their souls with icy fear. But for fun, the boss decided to give them one chance. He threw 2 swords at the feet of the captives, forcing them to choose between life and death. The boss chose 2 to fight against each other. The winner will gain freedom. It was incredible cruelty, the embodiment of ruthless savagery. The chief announced that the one who wins will get freedom, and the loser will face an inevitable end. Now one question remained. Are they ready to fight? One of the men began to shout that he must fight. He would not allow himself to die a slave. He remembered his family, children, wife, and decided to survive at any cost. His colleague did not understand where such passion came from. But this man clenched his teeth and shouted that he would not die here under any circumstances. He picked up the sword, promising himself that this fight would be his chance to return home. He shouted at his opponent, urging him to raise his sword and fight for his life. But his friend could not raise his weapon. Tears clouded his eyes. He could not fight with his friend. A robber was hanging over him, threatening that if he did not take the sword, he would die on the spot. The man seemed to be ready for anything, even death. He didn't care. Those who watched this spectacle from the dungeon were amazed. They saw real beasts in front of them. The robbers forced the unfortunate people to fight against each other just for their own amusement. Lives were at stake. One of them could go home, and that was just terrifying. This man, facing the threat of death, finally took up the sword. Despite his fear, he gathered his spirit and prepared for battle. The robbers began to make bets on which of the captives would win. One of them was sure that the old man would win. They raised their stakes, wanting to prove which of them was right and that one of the captives was bound to lose. Both warriors looked into each other's eyes, saying goodbye and apologizing to each other. One of the men raised his sword over his friend, swung and shouted that he was fighting because his family was waiting for him. Despite the advantage, his opponent managed to block the blow, continuing the fight. After overcoming the pain, he suppressed his emotions, held on tight, blocking the blows, and asked his friend why he was doing this. He apologized again, saying that he had to keep fighting because he had no other choice. It looked silly from the outside, and the way things turned out was incredibly sad and absurd. The boy chastised himself for not knowing how to fight, remembered his father who had died, and now he had to fight a friend. It became a nightmare. They fought not for life, but for death. Their rage grew to a terrible level, as if all the dark powers had awakened within them. In the face of death, they are ready to use their last strength. Despite their bloody wounds, they continue to fight without giving up. One fights to return to his family, the other because of the betrayal that hurt him. Finally, the sword ends up in the body of one of them, piercing him through. The one who struck a blow punishes himself for what he has done. Prisoners from the dungeon understand. This is not just a nightmare. This is a real hell. A man who has just wrestled a friend stands watching him fall. He sees his friend fall to the ground, breathless. Leaning over him, he apologizes and asks for forgiveness. The robbers laughed, pleased with the spectacle they had made. They were comforted by this cruel spectacle. However, for their leader, this battle was boring and did not arouse much interest. Soon the robbers began to organize new rounds, now choosing stronger people to please the boss. They looked forward to the next battle, eager for new entertainment. The robbers evaluated which of the captives was worthy to enter the arena. One of the prisoners asked to let them go, wanting to avoid this fate. But his friends silenced him, determined not to stoop to such humiliation. The robber chose the one who looked the most frightened, drawing him out for battle. He found himself opposite Da Wang's brother, preparing for a tragic duel. In his thoughts there was one cry: if only he had not been chosen. The robber was staring intently at the boy, who was clearly frightened. Genbo hoped he wouldn't be chosen to fight. He was not ready for such tests of fate. However, the robbers needed entertainment. They, according to the old scheme, threw swords at two chosen warriors. If they want to live, they must fight. One of the chosen refused to fight for their pleasure. The robber rudely reacted to this refusal, asking how he dared. Both prisoners decided that they would rather die than put on a show for them. The robber informed the boss about the situation, asking what to do next. After all, the captives seemed to have begun to forget their place, and these two dared to defiantly refuse. The chief viewed them with derision, considering them brave for such a refusal. He ironically repeated how brave they are if they refuse to fight. One of the men said that it was inhumane to force them to kill their loved ones. He refused to fight, even if his life was at stake. The chief of robbers defiantly asked, will he not fight even at the cost of his life? Anyone else in your place would be fighting for their lives, but you are not, the boss mockingly remarked. The robbers, watching the stubborn captives, waited to see what the boss would do with this unruly boy. One of them even bet that the boss would kill him with one blow. Another bet that the boss would beat them until they died. The boss, with a sly look, coldly said that if they didn't want to fight, they would have to die. With one powerful blow, he knocked one of the men off his feet. The chief considered them nothings because they dared to disobey him. His men were amazed at the force of the blow with which he demonstrated his power. The man who refused to fight flew to the side, hitting the ground. He coughed in pain, feeling the effects of the brutal blow. The boss continued the abuse, picking him up by his clothes, preparing another blow. Swinging his fist, he reminded that everyone should know their place, and bravery is only punished here. A defiant blow hit the boss right in the face, knocking him off his feet. His friend, watching the beating with tears in his eyes, begged the chief to stop. But another robber put his sword to his neck, saying that if he didn't want to die right now, he should shut up. The chief continued to mercilessly beat the defenseless people, showing his brutality. He made them fight and suffer in front of other prisoners. After the beating, he threw the mutilated body in front of a friend as a gruesome warning. The people in the cage, watching this, understood that they were in a real hell. The pain for the dead comrades was boundless. It was truly a horror. The gang boss glared at anyone who might dare to disobey his orders. He saw the fear in their eyes and realized that now they would not even dare to resist. The captives were silent, fearfully staring into the void, not daring to speak. Their eyes were full of fear and hope that this time they would be spared the choice. The boss ordered to take the fat man out of the cage. Genbo understands that it is about him. The robber grabbed him by his clothes and began to pull him out, ignoring his pleas for help. He did not heed any requests. "Fat pig, if you want to live, you have to fight," they told him coldly. The chief ordered Genbo to kill the beaten boy lying in front of him. Genbo, barely holding back tears, does not understand how he can kill this person. The chief cruelly added that if he did not do this, he would die first. He dropped Genbo's sword and, striking him on the back, ordered immediate action. The boss said that his patience is not limitless, and this is the only chance for Genbo. Calling him a bag of bones, the boss began to prepare for manipulations. Genbo closed his eyes as the boss took his hands and pointed the sword. Despite the resistance, the boss forcefully controlled his movements. He gripped Genbo's hands, controlling the force of each movement. "It will all end as soon as you swing your sword," whispered the boss. The beaten man looked at the sword that barely touched his neck. The feeling of death slowly enveloped him. The chief whispered to Genbo that he was doing great, but now more power should be added. Genbo begged to stop, but suddenly heard a strange sound, unusual for this area. Everyone froze, and the boss, frightened, began to look around. Genbo, sweaty and scared, realizes that he almost killed his comrade. The robbers began to look around in fright, trying to determine where the sound was coming from. Their confidence was shaken, and they lost their composure at the strange noise. Although the sound was quiet, it affected the nerves of each of them. Suddenly, a silhouette of a young man appeared on the horizon, rushing towards them on a horse. The robbers stood alertly waiting, ready to meet the stranger. The boy, limping a little, stepped on the ground with his right foot, and the left dragged carelessly behind him. He walked, holding on to his horse, and the sounds of his walking echoed throughout the valley. It was a young man who came back here for a reason. He had been waiting for a long time to meet such scoundrels who did not deserve to live. Dam Ho calmly stepped into their territory, as if entering his domain. Around him spread an incredible, almost demonic aura that permeated the space. His eyes flickered with the dark light that the prisoners remembered from the dungeon. They realized that this was the same boy whose look made the heart skip a beat. The young master looked at the robbers with cold hatred, not tolerating their existence in this sinful world. The robbers opened their mouths in surprise, seeing with what audacity he entered. Their boss, seeing the boy, did not hide his surprise and admiration for his confidence. All the bandits had a lump in their throats from fear. It seemed as if the air around them had become heavier. The chief froze, waiting to see what this mysterious young man would bring with him. He had met many strong people in his life, but now he felt something special. For the first time in his life, the boss so clearly felt someone else's thirst for blood. Looking at Dam Ho, he forgot everything he was doing. "Who is this guy?" Dam Ho slowly approached, and none of the robbers dared to say a word to him. When he got closer, some robbers tried to stop him. But, looking into his eyes, their hearts shrank with fear so much that they could not utter a word. They feared him like a wild predator. None of them could tell if he was a human or a demon. The boss asked the boy, "Who is he anyway?" The young master turned to Genbo, who widened his eyes in surprise. Dam Ho ordered him to come forward. Genbo, with tears in his eyes, saw Dam Ho and was overwhelmed by his powerful presence. But the leader of the bandits decided to take advantage of the moment. He put the sword to Genbo's neck and threatened that he would die if anyone moved. Dam Ho only repeated his order to approach him. The boss brazenly assured that this boy would die if Dam Ho took even one step. One more step, and Genbo will lose his life. He held tightly to his sword, realizing that he couldn't make it. After these words, Dam Ho began to emit demonic energy, his hands filled with incredible power. Every step he took destroyed the ground and burned the grass under his feet. The light of his aura illuminated the face of the chief, who was filled with horror. Dam Ho rushed towards the boss with a clenched fist. His goal was one devastating blow to reduce this scoundrel to ashes. The huge figure of the boss, known among the robbers as the Big Bump, clashed with Dam Ho's fist. The collision caused a powerful explosion that spread all around. The chief was left with only fragments, and in a second he ceased to exist. The young master's fist blew him to pieces, turning him into dust. The loud sound of the impact almost deafened everyone, and sound waves seemed to cut through the air around. The robbers began to look around, shocked by what they saw. The place where their boss stood was now nothing but a clump of dust. They saw only the remnants of his miserable existence. It seemed impossible to them. Is it possible to turn the boss into a pile of rubble with one blow? Dam Ho said that they had chosen the wrong road. After the blow, the young master turned to Genbo, asking if he was all right. Genbo came up, hugged him, and asked him to close his eyes for a moment. Those who remained did not understand who destroyed their village, and asked who he was. Dam Ho coldly answered their question. "And who are you?" One of the robbers, drawing his sword, shouted that he was a sergeant of the Bloody Jobuks. After hearing the word bloody, the young owner realized that it is not worth making a ceremony with them. The sergeant declared that they were bloody beasts, the legendary robbers of these lands, and if Damho surrendered, they would let him go. Damho only smiled, responding ironically to their words. The sergeant continued that his brothers were ready to draw their swords and make the boy die if he did not obey. They promised to show their strength because they belonged to the squad of bloody beasts. The robbers decided to take revenge for their leader and for disturbing them. A huge army of robbers with swords and cold weapons began to surround our hero. Damho, alone against an entire army, bravely entered the battlefield. Having gained incredible strength, he decided to go straight at them. Dashing between several swords, he confidently strode forward. As they began to swing their swords, the light of his aura blinded their eyes. The heads of the robbers were breaking, and the teeth were flying in the air. The red liquid began to flood the battlefield, forming a terrifying picture. Soon, all the attacking warriors were reduced to small pieces by his demonic blows. There was no doubt left by this diabolical creature that appeared in their camp, but it was not clear which of them was actually scarier, the young master or these bloody beasts robbers. The fight was filled with bright red colors of blood. The young master Damho, coming to the camp, began to administer justice. He turned these scoundrels into a bloodbath. Their cries for mercy did not reach his ears. They did not hear the groans of those who were abused, and now they were getting the same. Just as they ignored other people's pleas, Damho did not hear their pleas for mercy. The sergeant, looking at the bloody carnage, understood. Before him was a real demon. One of the robbers realized that they had to stop this young man, but fear and terror paralyzed them, because they were on the verge of complete destruction. This young man didn't just defeat them, he crushed them all, leaving only ruins. One of the survivors begged Damho to stop, and the young man turned to him. The sergeant, standing on his knees, begged for forgiveness, assuring that this punishment was enough. He claimed that they had already paid in full for their crimes, and had seen true hell. Damho made them suffer in a way they themselves thought was cruel. The bloody young master heard this and almost laughed at the irony. The sergeant continued with tears, not understanding what made this demon commit such a massacre. He begged and asked for forgiveness, but Damho replied that forgiveness should not be asked of him. The sergeant, puzzled, understood what he was hinting at. Damho pointed at Genbo, saying that only that guy has the right to forgive them. The sergeant crawled over to Genbo on his knees, looking at him pleadingly. He begged for forgiveness that they had made a terrible mistake. The sergeant promised that they would do whatever Genbo ordered, apologize in any way they could. Genbo's friends reminded him that these robbers were responsible for his father's death. The memories of what they had done to his father brought back pain in him. The father protected his son to the last in this chaos. This memory caused unbearable pain in Genbo's heart. The sergeant continued to plead with him, swearing sincere remorse for himself and his squad. He prayed sincerely for forgiveness, standing on his knees. Genbo silently turned his back on them without saying anything. Seeing this, the robber furiously began calling him a fat rascal, furious that their pleas for forgiveness had been rejected. The sergeant cried out in despair. How can we be called human after all this? Damho grabbed the scoundrel's clothes, reminding him that this is what true forgiveness looks like. A criminal like him has no right to offend anyone. His life depends on whether this young man will forgive him or not. He has no right to do so, just as they had no right to abuse the defenseless. The young owner asked the sergeant if they spared at least one of the prisoners when they begged for mercy. In his final desperation, the sergeant shouted that they were all damned bastards. He promised that their patrons would definitely take revenge on the young owner for treating them like that. Damho, looking forward to this retaliatory blow, began to accumulate strength in his fist. His patience snapped because this scoundrel was just talking. With one blow, Damho blew the sergeant to pieces. The remains of the sergeant were scattered all over the field. His last blow, like the explosion of a firecracker, scattered this scoundrel like dust on the ground. Other robbers who remained on the battlefield rushed to flee. However, Damho, as if hunting mice, began to catch them one by one. He destroyed them with his demonic blows, leaving no chance. Their cries for mercy were never heard. It was a brutal bloodbath, for which these scoundrels paid in full. Finally, this horrible scene was over. A young owner was standing among the many dead. Everything was over. Not a single living soul remained among the bandits. No one understood to the end. He is a demon or an angel, but what they saw stayed with them for the rest of their days. The surviving merchants could not hide their surprise. For the first time in their lives, they met a person of such strength. He single-handedly crushed an entire squad, incinerating them like sand blowing in the air. Damho walked up to Genbo, put his hand on his shoulder and told him it was over. Genbo, with tears in his eyes, could hardly contain his emotions, feeling deep gratitude for his rescue. The merchants finally came out of the dungeon, begging and thanking their savior. They understood that this young man had saved them from slavery or death by the sword, and that was priceless to them. The rescued merchants felt that they owed Damho their whole lives and did not know how to thank him. Damho, hearing their gratitude, replied that this was quite enough for him. He didn't even plan on saving them. He just wanted to help this boy. But it so happened that he saved them too, so they wanted to somehow thank him. Damho asked them to simply do nothing. That was quite enough. He smiled as he accepted their gratitude. He then invited Genbo to go with him. In response, Genbo respectfully called him Hen, elder brother. From that moment on, Genbo left the traders and went on a journey with Damho. Soon, word spread throughout the world of Murim that the blood beasts had been destroyed, leaving not a single one alive, and their leader, Jahu, dead. Those who crushed these bandits smiled, having lost a valuable dog that will no longer benefit them. In the place where the bloody beasts were destroyed, crows appeared. They ate the remains of these scoundrels. Suddenly, several people swung and threw objects in their direction. This scared the crows, and they flew in different directions. Those who quit were patrons of these thugs, who now watched their remains being torn apart by predators. Now it was difficult to determine exactly how many soldiers lay here. Scanning the chaos, they found no clues about the criminals, but it was important to them to find an answer at any cost. For them, the loss of Chief Dongjaku was a heavy blow, because he was their dog and servant. If they don't retaliate, it will be a big stone in their clan's wheels. Then one of them noticed something brilliant and interesting. It was a quartz stone, rare and very expensive. It could hardly have belonged to Yah. It was probably related to someone else. Meanwhile, our young host and his new friend found a place to rest and decided to have a snack. Genbo lit a fire and started cooking. His father taught him to cook even with a minimum of ingredients. A simple soup could save a life. For our hero, it was a tasty meal, albeit a simple one. He ate happily and couldn't help but notice the bowl that Genbo had used for cooking, the only thing left from his father. Suddenly, Genbo fell to his knees, and the young master did not understand what had happened. The boy asked to be taken with him to where Damho was going. At first, the young owner could not understand why he was asking so fervently. Damho asked why Genbo wanted to go with him, and the boy replied that it was his father's last wish. If Genbo really wants to, Damho decided to take him with him. They're leaving tomorrow morning, so they should rest. The boy thanked Damho, promising to never forget his kindness and remain faithful to him. They prepared a place to sleep near the fire. Genbo, remembering his father, promised through tears to become the best cook in the world. Damho lay deep in thought. He was filled with curiosity about the adventures ahead. The next morning, they set out for the town of Hamil. Hamil was the last place before the road to Jinwang. They decided to stop here to rest after a long journey. The air in this city was different. Genbo believed it was because of being close to Jinwang. Damho asked Genbo not to be upset or think about the past. He advised him to look for new horizons, and now they need to find a place to rest. The young master sent his horse to the best stable. He then headed to the bar with Genbo. Upon entering, they smelled the strong smell of meat and booked a room with a meal for two. In the bar, people talked about their problems. Some complained about bandits, and some were bandits themselves. Not so long ago, there were rumors that all the bandits from the Bloody Scoundrels organization were killed, but no one knew who did it. Genbo listened carefully. Several new visitors came to the establishment. People paid attention to the beautiful girl who appeared in the bar. There was an old man with the girl who prepared the best room for her. She looked very hungry and wanted something tasty. Sitting down at a chair, she waited for her food. Noticing that the bar was quite noisy, the old man turned to the revelers in the bar, and they noticed his demonic gaze. Everyone huddled, realizing that the old man was used to the noise and commotion that surrounds him in every city. The girl also appreciated the atmosphere of the city, deciding that it was a great place to regain strength and relax. Looking around, she noticed a strange guy who seemed a little unusual to her. He was looking at her, too. The guy was sitting quite close, and the girl was a little embarrassed. She was particularly drawn to his eyes. She also noticed a plump young man next to him. She asked them why they were looking at her like that. Maybe there was something wrong with her face. Genbo flinched when she suddenly turned to him. He simply explained that she was very beautiful, and so he held his gaze for a while. The girl thanked him for the compliment and asked what his name was. The guy introduced himself, and she noted that the name Genbo sounded beautiful and original. She introduced herself as Simoke. Genbo, smiling, praised her name, calling it pleasant and sweet, and the girl smiled in response to his sincerity. The old man by her side made sure that she kept her dignity, but the girl enjoyed the conversation, and Genbo warmed to her. She was also interested in Genbo's companion. Damho tried to ignore the girl, but her words confused him a little. To this girl, the boys looked quite strange as a couple of strangers in this bar. The old man strongly advised her not to be distracted and not pay attention to others. But she felt that something was wrong here. He kept reminding her of Master Makchu, who would hardly be pleased to see her behavior. However, since her father was not around, she saw nothing wrong with it. But was this place really suitable for recreation? The old man shouted again, affirming with all his heart that his words were the truth. This caused the girl a little anxiety. Meanwhile, Damho parked his horse in one of the courtyards. Cognac was resting after a long journey. Damho left her there, intending to return soon to let her rest. He did not notice how someone approached him from behind. The old man suddenly appeared and asked if the young man was here by chance. But Damho did not understand what he was talking about. The old man raised his voice, declaring that he should not be deceived. He could clearly see that he was not an ordinary person. The old man approached the young man curiously, noticing the muscles hidden under his clothes. He has lived a long life and is hard to fool. He was sure that this boy was a master of martial arts. The old man met many different people during his life. Many of them broke under the weight of his wisdom and experience. But the appearance of this young man at first sight did not give him peace. The young man's black eyes resembled a real whirlpool, hinting at hidden excitement. The old man was sure that in front of him was someone who towered over others like a high mountain. When he looked into the eyes of the young master, his back even felt numb. To the question, "Who are you?" the boy calmly replied that his name was Damho. However, this name did not reveal anything to the old man. But Damho did not understand why it was so important. The old man explained that he came here for a reason and wants to know if the boy has a connection with one of them. But Damho did not understand who he was talking about. The old man looked at his leg and noticed the lameness. It was a shame for him to have a lame leg. Even with great strength, with such a leg, he would lose his balance and become chaotic in his movement, the old man thought. He realized that this was not the person he was looking for, but he still wanted to ask a favor. If it would be beneficial to both of them, he advised him to think things through first. Regardless of what happens in the future, the old man said, let him go his way. Damho felt a hidden energy in these words, like a hidden threat. The next day he got ready, stayed at a hotel and ordered everyone to gather quickly. People began to bustle, hastily preparing for departure so as not to become prey for bandits. The warriors laughed at Genbo, who carried on his back the bowl left to him by his father, regarding him as a laughing stock that looked like a turtle. The young master approached Genbo and asked him to sit up straight. He emphasized that as a warrior skillfully wields a sword, so Genbo skillfully uses fire and food, and should be proud of it. According to Damho, it doesn't matter at all what others think of him. These words gave Genbo confidence, but he couldn't find Sim-Ok with his eyes. When Genbo mentioned her, Damho informed her that she had already left. Damho wondered why Genbo was upset. They will reach Changwon in a few days. Damho advised him to go without paying attention to anything. A long and difficult road awaits them. All the way, Genbo tried to catch up with Damho. Damho's horse was hardy, and he trained it well. However, while climbing the mountains, he felt an extremely strong energy. This energy spread everywhere, as if the smell of blood filled his mind. Genbo also smelled this and realized that they were approaching something dangerous. When they arrived at the road, it was blocked. The road was blocked by the bodies of the dead who were defeated in the battle. Genbo, glancing at them, recognized the servants who worked at the Silver Stream estate. It was clear that they were attacked, but the question remained, who did it? Damho thought that these people were similar to those who had attacked Genbo and his squad. Perhaps they were their allies. The bodies seemed to have been left there specifically for them to stumble upon. It was obvious that they were facing a scene of torture. These people were tortured for a long time, beaten, and then salt was sprinkled on the wounds. They were subjected to such a brutal interrogation that even a master of martial arts could not survive. Genbo was scared. This world seemed too cruel to him. Damho assured him to keep calm and believe in himself. Suddenly the boy felt a flash somewhere in the forest, realizing that they were being watched. He told Genbo to mobilize quickly and follow him. He recognized these people and understood that they needed to hurry. First, several important steps had to be taken immediately. The robbers watched them, noticing that they were just moving on. The maneuver with the bodies was arranged only to evoke emotions in them, but they remained calm. A guy who carried such a threat seemed interesting to them. The robber could not believe that this young man single-handedly defeated all the bloody beasts. He thought that there were at least 10 people with him. He remembered the moment when he had asked the wounded warriors, who had destroyed Jaku's squad, and received an answer. Only one of them knew the truth. They reported that the boy was lame. At first this scoundrel did not believe them, thinking that they were lying. But having seen it with his own eyes, he was amazed. How could a lame young man do this? The warriors were waiting for the signal to attack these guys. Their leader declared that this young man would pay for touching their property, but first they must report to the mountain hut. Drawing his sword, he said that they had nothing to lose if they caught the boy first, and then reported him. The leader addressed everyone, emphasizing that at the signal they should go and capture the scoundrel. Their squad was located in rough, nearby mountainous terrain, and they needed to send a signal. One of the soldiers pulled out a whistle and gave a loud signal. The sound echoed throughout the valley, and the entire group heard it. However, this sound was also heard by the young master, Dam Ho. He realized that they were probably people from gangs. Genbo drew attention to the fact that they were in a difficult situation. Their road was blocked. Sensing the danger, Dam Ho ordered Genbo to stay put and not to come forward. An incredible, demonic red explosion occurred at the place where Dam Ho had gone. In his path appeared a bunch of warriors armed to the teeth who were defeated, despite the numerical superiority. Their leader, with wide eyes, looked on and could not understand how a whole group of people could lose to one person. For him, it was an incredible, incomprehensible phenomenon. He thought that the information about this young man was just fiction, but now he saw with his own eyes that it was true. People did not know what to do. They could not keep calm and self-control because of the young man's powerful energy. If this continued, and he continued to smash their warriors, they would be left with only corpses. Dam Ho wouldn't let anyone get close, and anyone who approached with a sword couldn't defeat him. Those who approached him closer than a meter received a fatal blow. They could not oppose him. The young man destroyed everyone who stood in his way. He did it with such cold-bloodedness that even the barbarians did not believe in such cruelty. Like powerful dynamite, he tore their army to pieces. For them, he was a real demon who left only bodies behind. The leader of the bandits saw many masters traveling along the Ganges, and many of them were not only warriors, but also leaders. However, when he faced this demon, he had never felt such a terrible power. Dam Ho left the leader to look at what had happened to his warriors, and asked why he killed the innocent followers. The man replied that each person has his own value. The man explained that in their world these people deserved this fate, and it was only part of the script. Their life or death did not matter, so they died. Dam Ho understood his point of view, but believed that their squad were the same thugs who did not deserve to live. It was difficult for the leader to agree with this directly. However, he understood that he would have to solve this issue himself. Dam Ho warned that if they really thought so, he would show them where they belonged. In the meantime, we delve into history. On the eastern slopes of the Tian Shan mountain range, Sacheon Sanyang is located, a place belonging to the Bagda clan. 3 years ago, the most powerful faction in the region united to oppose the bloodthirsty bandits, but were defeated. And since then, the bandits have become the masters of these lands. They have since been recognized as a faction within the syndicate. The leader of Sacheon Sanyang, Yong Hansong, wanted to know more about the Gunchonsen group, but did not receive any information. He was worried because their people were delayed. The leader's advisor was sure that nothing serious had happened. The leader heard about the situation in the Tomb of Evil and was waiting for the return of Yung San, who was supposed to fix everything. The counselor assured him that everything would be fine after Yung San returned. They understood that just one squad might not be enough for the task. However, the leader did not want to reduce his ambitions and looked forward to the return of his warrior with the squad. Returning to the battlefield, the sounds of swords echoed through the valley. Dam Ho dealt with the bandit leader as he did with his victims, proving that he deserved to live. A squad of bandits saw what had happened to their leader. Together, they swung at Dam Ho with their swords, aiming to destroy him. The squad mobilized with all their might, determined to make Dam Ho die. However, his lightning strike pierced the body of one of them. The young man's fist went through, silencing the enemy. He sent him to the same place where their leader was already, and the blow of his fist swirled like a hurricane. Like a whirlwind, Dam Ho swept all those who remained from the face of the earth. Looking around, he noticed a few more enemies. One of them noticed that Dam Ho opened his left leg a little. This was their chance to hit a weak point. This man mustered all his strength, realizing that this might be his last chance. Even if he didn't kill the young man, he might be able to hold back his onslaught somehow. Using the strongest sword technique known in these lands, he delivers a twisting blow. His sword goes straight for the young master's leg, almost touching his body. Dam Ho sees this and instantly reacts. Quickly jumping up, he manipulates the air, leaving the enemy without a chance. The man realizes that his shot was unsuccessful. Dam Ho's counterattack comes crashing down on him like a massive rock. He presses him to the ground, forcing him to feel the force of his blow. The opponent disappears into the ground, being under incredible pressure. His body disintegrates from the impact, flying in different directions. The enemy is defeated by the strength of the young man. Dam Ho repaid him for the self-confidence with which he had come to battle. We returned to the old man who was on his way to Sanyang with Simok. They went to their leader, and the old man wondered what they should find here so important. Simoke noted that this place is unique, surrounded by huge walls. These were incredible fortifications and would have been great for protecting their holdings. The old man understood that high walls meant that there was something important here that needed protection. Simoke knew that everything they were looking for had to be right here. They planned to explore the place and find what they needed. In the evening, the leader received urgent news that had to be reported immediately. An unexpected guest came to them, who was constantly looking for a meeting with the leader. When the leader asked who this guest was, the servant answered. He explained that a young lady from the group Bloody Scales had arrived and wanted an audience. The leader realized how unexpected her arrival at this time was. Even his advisor suspected that they might have learned something important. It could become dangerous if they find out more. The question arose, what to do? Perhaps it should be removed. This option seemed promising, but first you need to meet and understand what she knows and take action. Lunala's command, take her to the guest room. Left alone, the leader thought deeply about this event. His thoughts returned to the group Bloody Scales and the unexpected visit. This young lady arrived at an extremely unfortunate moment. 20 years ago, an outstanding warrior named Su Myung appeared, who became famous for his incredible combat achievements and leadership qualities. All the martial arts masters who followed him called themselves the Bloody Scales Group. 5 years ago, when the Bloodstorm swept through the Xinjiang region, they didn't intervene. And if they had, Sacheon Sanyang wouldn't have what it has now. Now the question arises, has the time come for them to come out of the shadows? This thought added some anxiety to the leader. Soon he met a young lady from Bloody Scale. She was extremely happy to meet him, considering it a great honor to see the famous leader Sacheon Sanyang. The lady introduced herself as Sim Ok, saying that she was from the Bloody Scales Group and greeted the owner of the residence. The leader replied that he was glad to see her. As a sign of hospitality, she brought tea from her lands, which grows only on certain plantations. She happily offered to try the tea that is grown on the plantations of the owner of Sanyang. He, in turn, believed that this honor was a sign of respect for her clan. Sim Ok raised a cup of tea to her lips and said that she was honored to be the first to taste this drink. To this, the leader remarked that she did not even imagine the full significance of this moment. Her curiosity grew stronger. However, she was warned that excessive curiosity could have unpleasant consequences. Meanwhile, the leader inquired about her father, remarking that he would be glad to visit him, but that he had responsibilities that prevented him. Sim Ok respectfully said that her father had said that if the leader of Sanyang followed the path of justice, he could become the ruler of Xinjiang. Hearing this, the leader smiled, because the path of justice for him is a blurred concept. She added that her father trusts him and does not doubt him. The leader admitted that he did not feel worthy of such words, but promised to justify this trust one day. The leader asked if that was the only thing her father had passed down through her. If that was all, he offered to meet her father and would do what he promised. Soon in the residence, the leader ordered to prepare dinner and leave it for the night. It was real hospitality on the part of the host, and she was grateful for it. Our story reveals the meaning of confident steps that can destroy stone walls. A twisting blow that always hits its target. 2 creepy movements, and in a moment everything was destroyed. In the blink of an eye, Ginchunsen and his subordinates were defeated. All bandit connections in these lands were completely destroyed by the young master. Perhaps due to the shock of this event, but soon afterwards, Genbo became very ill, and they stopped for a rest stop near the town of Hami. Due to the intense heat, Genbo lost consciousness and sometimes suffered from hallucinations. His eyes lost their lively luster, he convulsed, suffering from a ringing in his ears. He passed out again and again, not regaining consciousness for 3 or even 4 days. It was a real test for Genbo in his younger years. Damho understood that he could have given him chi energy to speed up his recovery, but his energy based on dark martial arts was too dangerous and destructive. If he injected this energy, Genbo's body would not be able to withstand it, and it would tear his internal arteries. So another, safer way had to be found. The young man decided that he might have to go in search of a doctor. Dam Ho was approached by one of the grooms who had spent his whole life at the stable, but had never seen such beautiful horses. Dam Ho thanked him for allowing them to stay, especially considering his companion's illness. But what was Dam Ho to do when his friend was seriously ill? Dam Ho decided that he would look for a doctor and asked the groom if there were any doctors nearby. The groom replied that there were only endless meadows. There are almost no chances to find a good doctor. The groom emphasized once again that there is little hope. There are no chances at all. However, he remembered the legend of the Red Scale, a monster that had only been seen once, many years ago. After hearing the story, Damho mounted his horse and set off. The groom told him that after jumping through the meadows, he would see the Red River. There, the land is so red that even the water looks pure red against its background. There, further on, Red Scale is a pure monster fish that is considered the best medicine. If you catch it and prepare it, you can quickly put the boy on his feet, but it is difficult to catch it. The fish hides and is merciless to those who try to catch it. One such fish can reach 1.5 meters, about 3 meters long. To catch this fish, Damho first caught a duck. He decided to use it as bait because there are only myths about this monster fish, and no one ever visits this river. First, you need to find the habitat of this fish. When the young owner threw a duck into the water, the blood was supposed to attract hungry fish, and this method gave a chance to catch it. It seemed that a quick result should not be expected. However, literally in a second, this bait worked. The silhouette of a fish appeared on the water, swiftly swimming down the Red River. Damho rushed towards her, trying to catch her. It was a huge fish that grabbed its prey. She was attracted by the smell of blood from the duck. The fish was of incredible size, and the young master stopped for a moment to appreciate its scale. When she jumped into the water, a huge wave rose from her mass. If she's that big, there must be something alchemical about her that gave her the ability to immortality or longevity. But there was one problem. The fish seems to have noticed Damho, and now she's deciding what to do about it. Since the fish is too cautious, it is unlikely that it will just come to the surface. So you need to bait her and most likely take her out of the water. Blood was the main factor that attracted her, but the young master no longer had the lure with him. If the fish reacts to the smell of blood, he decided to use a knife to cut his palm. The drops of blood were supposed to attract her, and he began to drip blood into the water. He realized that he had only one chance, and lowered his hand into the river. The blood began to mix with the water, creating an attractive smell. It was the only chance. If he drops it, the fish will not appear again. Soon it became apparent that she was beginning to swim towards him. He couldn't miss it. Let's return to the night Sachon Sanyang. The leader realized that Red Star was the name of the sword. He got this sword with great difficulty. It took 5 years for him to be able to take possession of it. He invested considerable effort and wealth to find it. And there was nothing in the world that he could not cut with this sword, which makes its owner the ruler of the heavens. Now he had nothing to fear, because nothing could stop him, the ruler of Junghausen. Counselor Hausen soon broke the silence. The ruler let him in. There was something important that prompted him to visit. The advisor folded his hands and reported. He reported that something bad had happened to Jen Chong-san and his army. The advisor was sure that they were killed, because it happened urgently. The head slammed his hand on the table in anger. This young man was not one to be simply taken and killed, but the advisor insisted on the truth of his words. The realization that someone dared to stop him and kill Jung-san was nonsense to him. First, you need to find the culprit, and if necessary, send there the people about whom the ruler spoke with contempt. But if they are sent, Bloody Scale will not be left behind. For the chapter, this was an obstacle that must be overcome at any cost. A lot of suspicion has already fallen on them, and there is no reason to be inactive. On the raft, the young owner felt how he was being moved by the waves from this huge fish. She smelled blood and headed towards her victim, who meanwhile was preparing for the meeting. Filled with dark energy, the fish jumped out of the water. Looking at the boy, she saw in him a beautiful prey. Damho, in turn, took a spear made of wood and charged it with magical energy. With a powerful movement, he threw the spear, striking the fish. After a while, he returned to the stable where Genbo was staying. Soon the boy began to regain consciousness after treatment. Until the end, he did not understand what had happened to him. He couldn't even believe Hyung's words that he had passed out. Damho informed him that the boy had not yet recovered and should rest. The groom was amazed that Genbo had recovered, but the boy himself went on a hunt for the monster fish and even took away its internal alchemy. Although the groom didn't know much about martial arts, he knew for sure that if a fish had internal alchemy, it was an extraordinary mythical creature. The guy in front of him didn't meet any logical criteria, but Genbo on the mend was a good thing. If the internal alchemy he took from the monster was truly incredible, Damho would surely face great difficulties. The groom asked the young master to rest, promising to look after Genbo for him. Damho was extremely grateful. Life always reigned in Sacheon Sanyang Castle. Simo and the old man went out into the cold night air coming from the Boda Peaks. It was a beautiful place, and if it belonged to Bloodscale, there would be life left here. But the old man had long suspected that the leader they approached might be involved in all this. He was aware that the leader could kill him even before it was over. However, this was too cruel an assumption, because the girl was a daughter, not a son. The old man spoke these words but began to write on the table, emphasizing that someone was watching them, thus hinting at danger. Looking around, the old man began to get nervous, not understanding who it could be. The girl showed that one observer was on the roof, and the other was outside the window. There were only two of them. Will he be able to deal with them? They didn't even say anything. Everything was conveyed to each other by gestures, trying to remain unnoticed. They conducted a carefree dialogue, aware of all the consequences so as not to attract attention. Simo realized that she needed to sleep, and they said goodbye to each other. These people were hunting them and already felt that they would have no problem with these two scoundrels. They needed to somehow get inside, and while these people slept, carry out their devious plans. But suddenly an old man appeared on the horizon. He hit one of them with a powerful blow. He incapacitated the second by hitting him on the back of the head, rendering him helpless. When they fell to the ground, it was clear that the time had come. Now it was necessary to act quickly and efficiently. There was no time. They should have left this place urgently to save their lives. Mobilizing their resources, they tried to leave the area as quickly as possible. 7 oaks and their grandfather hid in the forest. They were going to the mountain. They wanted to look into a strange cave in the mountain. The warriors combed all the caves around and could not find them. They tried to be as careful as possible because a whole army was watching them. The old man, using his inner strength, cleared the way. Right now, he takes sharp objects in his hands and is about to jump. The moment he jumps in with Sim OK, they prepare their melee weapons for battle. The soldiers do not suspect that the old man is capable of such a thing at his age. He holds a cold weapon in his hands, aiming at his enemies. These objects fly at the heads of the warriors, and lightning strikes directly into the heads of opponents. Sim OK noticed that this throwing style was worthy of its name, taking away hundreds of souls with one blow. Hekna's shuriken throwing style was the best she had ever seen. She asked where they had gone and what kind of place it was. The old man, finding himself in a place where people were working in a mine, extracting something. Looking at this, all doubts disappeared from his mind. All these people who were here. Many people disappeared on the way to the Western trade region. Some were found already dead, and some simply disappeared. It seemed that all the missing traders and travelers had been caught and thrown into this rock to work. The damage done during the incident sends his thoughts back to the Blood Beast sect. The people who worked in this mine were constantly abused and forced to work even when they were tired. These warriors called people lazy. The lady looking at this understood that, as expected, Sachon Sanyang was behind all these disappearances. Watching the absurdity of how the warriors treat these slaves, treating them cruelly and forcing them to work under the threat of death. By forcing them to swing their picks faster, they instilled a strong sense of fear. The old man understands. If Sachon Sanyang is really involved in the disappearances, then this is a great reason to punish him. They need to hurry immediately. Sachon Sanyang personally arrived to catch these unruly children. He came out from behind the rock and turned to Sim OK. What is she doing here? He told her to stay in her chambers, but she decided to come to the other end and meet her doom there. Sim OK pointed her finger at those people and asked why they had captured them all. What kind of unforgivable things they were doing here. Sanyang just shook his head, holding his sword. They had no choice, just like him. It was the only way to find the blood demon. This realization occurs to the girl, and she realizes what they have come to. The old man understands. What choice did they have? They are hypocrites. The leader looked at their faces and realized that they were right. It is under this place that the blood demon is located, which more than 100 years ago flooded the entire Sanyang region with blood. Sim OK realizes that he is doing something so disgusting because of this cursed blood demon. According to the leader, the word disgusting does not fit this situation. If the girl does it again, he will show it to her. From his sheath, the leader pulls out a sword called Shindo Joksun, the favorite weapon of the blood demon. He recently found it in the Tomb of Evil. The old man understands how incredible this weapon is, the most powerful in the world, and he can't hold back his understanding of what happened. He only warns Sim OK to run away as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Gen Jonwan Singen, who had gone on another horse from the stable during the journey, returned back to the stable with his companions. And when the grooms realized the true value of Hekgui, they decided to create the Hekgui estate to obtain the best bloodline. Having finished their work, upon their return they arranged a great celebration. Genbo came back alive and well and managed to show off his cooking skills. He is going to feed them something delicious. His sense of taste was getting better every day, and he no longer felt tired. People looked at this guy's talent and were amazed at what he was cooking. People have heard that he is the boss's assistant, but he himself acts like a boss. Soon, the food was ready, and the boy was happy to make people happy with delicious food. That was his true way. After tasting these wonderful dishes, of a quality not seen in their village, the people recognized that this child was a true genius. The dishes smelled incredibly delicious and tasted simply amazing. The meat cooked by Genbo's hands was incredible and melted in the mouth. People and members of his family would eat his food every day, and this treat was simply incredible. With such skills, they recognized that he would definitely not be lost among the other cooks in Jonggun. At that moment, the young master Dam Ho came over, looking at his horse. The groom asked him why he was wandering here alone. Dam Ho is not used to noisy parties. He prefers to be alone. He was informed that his friend Genbo cooks incredible dishes, but this boy knows that he must become the best chef in the world. The groom also thanked Dam Ho that thanks to his horse, their farm would have better logs with the best pedigree, and all thanks to his stallion. He will do anything to thank Dam Ho, but he sees no material or value benefit in this. The groom does not understand why he does not want to take a fee because, thanks to him, they keep pace with other farms. But for Dam Ho, if that's the case, he's just happy for them. But the fact is that the grooms understand that if he has the blood horse blood heritage, he will definitely attract the attention of MANHUA and the Kwandong sect. The young master, upon hearing the name of the MANHUA sect, paid attention to it. The grooms went on to say that every 2 years they send horses to Chonggong to sell. The most prosperous sect in recent years is the MANHUA sect, and there is nothing they can do but try to attract their attention. The young master, hearing only the name of the MANHUA sect, could not contain his emotions. Walking around the stable, the groom talked about the old dragon, going back to the story of the most promising martial artist in the world. The people of Jongwon called this area blessed, all because this place was a center for 9 talented personalities. The best warrior, Jin Myung, was raised by the shamans with all the care and incredible effort. The Shaolin warrior monk Sochon is another outstanding representative of martial arts masters. A world-famous warrior from Mount Huo named Nia Geni. These are representatives of the old dragon martial arts masters. Dam Ho understands that Chang Mooning is the title of a leader, and the elder of the Hua Mountain sect now holds it. The groom knows little about the disciples of Mount Hua. All he heard was that the young warrior Mugjian had risen to the rank of an old dragon, and their citadel had become much larger than before. It seems to be the peak of the sect's prosperity since Hyunchong Chinin became Changmunin. But the young master doesn't fully understand why the masters do this. We return to the territory of the mountain, where incredibly cruel events are taking place. Mrs. Semak runs through the forest, panting from exhaustion. She realizes that what happened is simply incredible. Badly wounded, she escaped from the camp on the mountain. She remembers the moment old Heknu sacrificed himself for her. He warned her to run as hard as she could, using the last strength in her legs. After all, she would not be able to compete even with the swordsman Yon Hassan. The head, holding the legendary Blood Demon sword, declared that it was too late to flee. The old man rushed forward against this incredible sword, to somehow hold it while she had to run away. Crossing his swords, the chief yelled at the old man that he couldn't do anything. After all, if Yen Hasten raises his sword, his aura will overshadow everything. In the abode of evil, heads fly off their shoulders, and the power of this sword is simply incredible. Simak understood that the whole forest was teeming with warriors looking for her. Looking at the warriors below, she knew she had to knock them off their trail, even though she was wounded. In her mind, she apologized to Hekna and promised to return for him. An incredible number of soldiers were in a hurry, because the girl could not run far. From the traces of blood, they realized that she was somewhere nearby. They couldn't believe how she managed to escape with such a wound. This explained why she was second in the dynasty of the Blood Beast sect. The question remains, if she escaped, what should they do? Because the situation is dangerous if she returns to the sect. They must get rid of her at all costs, whatever the cost. After all, now while their leader has the sword of Hulma, if a leader masters the swordsmanship techniques and secret techniques of Hulma, none of the 9 great clans will be afraid of them, including the Blood Beasts. With this plan, they must buy time, because if everything goes wrong, the consequences will be incredible. Soon, one of the soldiers, who knows the area, realized that there must be a farm nearby. The counselor realized that if there was a farm, the girl could hide there or take a horse. If she followed the path, their plan would go to pieces. Everyone must follow the path, find the farm and the girl as quickly as possible. After some time, the girl, walking along the path, with pain in her eyes and body, she came across the farm. Although she did not know where she was going, numerous horses appeared before her. She understood that this is wonderful. You can hide here. She approached one of the horses and began to saddle him, although he resisted. She asked him to be quieter and not to delay, he should go with her. After all, the fate of the Xinjiang region depended entirely on her, and she begged the horse to help. Soon she was on him, and it was great. "Good girl," she whispered to the mare, trying to calm him down. The groom, returning to the farm, saw an unknown woman taking his horse. He shouted, "Who the hell are you?" She explained that she had problems and asked to give the horse temporarily. The groom shouted to the whole yard that a thief had appeared on their farm. Someone is trying to steal his precious horse. Simok understood that this was a real mess and did not know what to do. Soon, numerous men gathered around her. This is unacceptable for the groom. If there is a thief on the farm, he will deal with him. Simok begged them to understand, apologized, but did not have time to explain. They must leave. But these people looked after the horses and were not going to retreat. "What kind of shameful thief?" shouted one of the strong men, but the girl begged him to back off. The groom kept repeating that she couldn't just walk away saddled with their precious possessions. The girl explained that she would compensate all the damages later, but there was no time. Taking the horse, she understood that the safety of the Xinjiang region came first, so she asked everyone to leave in a rude tone. She forced people to step aside, moving on a wild horse. The villagers realized that she was really crazy. Left with no choice, she charged at them on horseback, yelling for them to be careful. And as soon as she saddled the horse, a beam, like an arrow of light, flew right at her head, and she could not dodge. This beam pierced her hat, almost taking her head off her shoulders. The arrow flew past Mistress Simok's head and hit a tree, piercing it. She looked at the fact that she almost died because she couldn't react quickly. And the soldiers surrounded her and were not going to let her go because there would be no mercy for her. They quickly caught up with her, and it is not clear how they followed her footsteps. Warriors surrounded her from all sides, and the groom did not know what to do. One of them said that Sacheon Sanyang suffered great losses because of her, and it is better for her to go with them without resistance, so as not to create big problems in the future. Simok shouted that she would not go with them for any money or anything in the world. But the Lord's advisor understood that she did not want it in a good way, and then he orders his warriors to treat her with all honors, and they sharpen their swords and attack her. The girl stands on the horse and pushes away from him, holding her sword. She wonders what happened to old Hekne. But if she wants to know, the warriors suggest that they surrender and not cause trouble. For her, these words sound ridiculous. She wasn't going to let them bully people knowing what they did. The hostess rushes past one warrior and strikes him. And then the soldiers accused her that Simok did not even care about the lives of her people, and she is a real heartless woman. In turn, Simok, waving his sword, gets to this witty fellow and advises him to think better of himself. And the battle unfolds in an incredible way on the field of the groom, who understands that these are the warriors of the dirty. And if this is true, then they do not understand what trouble has happened in their land. So they need to get their people out of this place quickly, because these bastards will cut down everyone in their path. One of them looked around and noticed that there were a lot of witnesses. His soldiers will take care of all that. After all, no one needs these witnesses, and they will not go far. The groom's warriors were not to blame for anything. They just didn't know what to do when these armed creatures attacked them. Sanyan's warriors began to destroy everyone in their path. People immediately began to flee, because if they stayed, they would all die. Realizing this, Sanyan's warriors shout at them that if they don't escape now, it's the end of them all. One of them could not run away from fear, and this warrior crushed him like a nut, admitting that today doesn't seem to be his day. Well, what a miserable day in the village. This is some kind of extermination of ordinary peasants who cannot even oppose anything. One niece sees how her grandfather is simply destroyed with one stroke of the sword. The groom looks ahead and sees that the girl has not been able to hide. She asks the warrior who approached her to spare her. She is not guilty of anything. In turn, the groom ran up to her and began to defend her, because this girl is not guilty of anything. How dare they? Let them stop. Looking around, Simok sees that it is simply incredible. She asks them all to stop. After all, these people are not guilty of anything. They did not touch anyone, and they do this to them. And from afar, the groom looks at his niece and just can't contain his pain and can't do anything. One of the warriors, holding a sword, doesn't even tremble at what he's about to do. He simply asks to blame the woman who brought trouble to their village, and called it a misfortune for them. The girl trembles convulsively with fear, even before the sword approaches her. But she has already said goodbye to her life. And then suddenly they heard the rumble of the earth. The rumble of the lame foot began to be heard all around. The demonic energy cut through the membranes of these warriors and stopped them. A suffocating aura rose above the battlefield and made everyone stop in place. With fear in their eyes, the Sanyan warriors looked at this boy. The sound of his steps made the heart of one of the leader's advisors freeze in terror. This boy is incredibly strong, and they couldn't help but stare at him. He approached the niece and the soldier who wanted to do this ridiculous prank. This warrior trembled, but held his sword and asked not to approach him. But he didn't care. As he got closer, this warrior lunged at him with his sword, and the red liquid darkened the entire space and fell to the ground from Damho's strike. The warriors of Sanyan and the simple peasants saw the incredible power before them. This lad knocked a strong warrior right in the air with one blow, right in front of their eyes. They couldn't believe it. It was like a dream, because it was impossible. After all, for them, this warrior is of a completely different level, and they asked him not to approach. The elder, the leader's advisor, has seen people like him a long time ago, and this guy is incredibly strong. Their leader called out that they were Sachon Sanyang's warriors, and had come here to capture the woman and just wanted to take her away. Damho, hearing these pitiful words, does not believe a word they say. Take her away, you say? This man continued that the woman had committed a sin against the great Sachon Sanyan. If Damho lets them leave peacefully and solve the problem here, then they'll just take her and leave. Damho listened to their words and realizes that they became afraid of him after the power they saw, and want to say that they want to leave after maiming and killing so many innocent people in this village. They are real liars. The warriors felt this deep and husky voice, as if it sounded from the abyss of this person, and people do not compromise. He is simply incredible, and he must be crazy if he underestimates the Sachon Sanyang army. Damho addressed these scoundrels, wielding his power and igniting it. If your lord Sachon Sanyang is so great, let him meet him in battle. The advisor realizes that it is necessary to go on the attack and kill this scoundrel, and orders his soldiers to attack. They must raise their swords and attack him from all sides and kill him. But the boy, not restraining his rage, begins to rush into battle. Against an incredible number of warriors, he begins a brutal bloodbath, forcing them to pay for their actions against ordinary people. We return to Mount Bagda, eastern Tanshan. Sachon Sanyang's head receives the news that something has happened that needs his quick attention. After all, they finally found what they were looking for a long time. They found the same blood demon they had been looking for so long. Sachon Sanyang realizes that he finally has the blood demon, and when asked where he is, his advisor answers that they took him to the temple near the Cave of Evil. Subordinates will bring him at dawn. But the head understands that this is not the case, and this time he will go alone. The next day in the temple, which was near the legendary mountain, Sachon Sanyang Temple, where the same legendary artifact was brought, the soldiers bent down and waited for the chief to do what he came here for. It was the blood demon, about which there were many legends. From this sarcophagus, an incredible energy could be felt, which was coming from it. And then everything Zhong Sanyang asked about the workers, that they are all now resting in the tomb of evil. The leader admitted that he would not get anything useful from those worthless idiots, and let them take care of them until dawn. But there was a very important nuance. Did they catch that girl at all? And he was told that since the commander-in-chief had gone in search, they were waiting for good news. Sanyan understood that they needed to catch the girl to prevent this from happening to them. Because if the Blood Beast sect intervened, it would all come to an end. And let the teams wait. Suddenly something happens. They must be on the lookout. Standing next to the great demonic chest, Laban kept repeating to himself that this was destiny from the beginning. Persimmon the blood demon must belong to him. No one knows as much about him as he does, and he knows everything about him, his personality, tastes, and habits. A blood demon will never allow a chest to be opened just like that. In order for him to allow this, he will receive his name because his path is paved with blood. Because of this, you can't even think about mastering the blood demon Persimmon until your hands are covered in blood. He pours an incredible amount of his blood on this sarcophagus. Laughing, he repeats that he can drink as much as he wants, and the light begins to penetrate his eyes. Light begins to appear from all sides of this sarcophagus. The head looked at it and understood that it had finally worked. And something appeared near this sarcophagus, an open chest. In the open trunk lay objects that were incomprehensible to him. Although incredible energy emanated from them, there was a book, and something that looked like an apple. On one was written, Blood Demon, Book of Jin Ken. And it was the same secret book that was inaccessible to anyone. And now she appeared in the hands of the head of Sachon Sanyang. And it turns out he also has the elixir of divine power that comes with this book. It was even better than he could have imagined. They even prepared an elixir for a person to inherit the power of the blood demon. He immediately swallowed it and felt this power. He felt sick for a second, and his stomach twisted so much that he almost died. He falls to the ground clutching his stomach, pain shooting through him. It felt as if his stomach had been pierced with a flaming blade, and his body began to penetrate the hellish flame, and it seemed to flow through his veins. Due to the incredible amount of energy, the head felt that he could not stand it, and in a few minutes, if he used this power, his head would explode. Looking at his body, he sees that the blood demon is a real creature, and he began to overshadow the man's body, tearing it apart and filling it with his power. The whole temple was enveloped by an incredible glow of energy. And we returned to the battlefield. Damho fought the army using deceptively simple attacks and moves. Warriors who faced Damho became as soft as rubber dolls. Damho's piercing blow became many times stronger, and Sacheon Sanyang's warriors felt that their attempts to fight back were nothing more than futile. His blows, like a billion fireworks, bounced from person to person and washed everything with blood. And in an instant, every attacker was thrown back by a rushing storm. Just one look at Damho in action would terrify anyone who happened to be on the farm at that moment. Seamok looks at this guy and admits that he is a real devil. How can he kill people so easily? After all, the incredible elite troops of Sacheon Sanyang were defeated in the blink of an eye, and their commander-in-chief of the army, Sachon-san, was left alone, and he asked not to come near him, and if the boy knelt down and raised his hands, then he would spare him. Damho looked at him and asked, "What is so special about them?" This commander-in-chief said that the great center of the Sanyang region was not only that, but their power extended to Changwon itself, which means that if the boy attacks Sacheon Sanyang, then all the way to Chong himself, only death awaits him. But the young master does not understand, so what? The commander-in-chief continued, "If he understands what it is about, then he should let him go and simply forget that such an incident happened." Damho looked around and heard the girl screaming next to him. She said that it is impossible to let him go under any circumstances. To the boy's question, why? She said that this scoundrel kidnaps people, crosses the plains and sends them into slavery. Seamok was telling the complete truth. She had never seen so many people in slavery, even on Boda Mountain in northern Tanshan. All those who kidnapped and stole people, it was them. If it is the work of their hands, then her father, Jinabo, was killed by their hands. It meant that these guys were real devils. The commander-in-chief understood how much of a predicament he was in, but it was too late to convince him, as he shouted that Damho was not the cause or the main problem for them. He had no choice but to run away from here and report to his mistress. Looking at the boy who was lame on one leg, he does not believe that this is a cripple. Uses the Nanjgong technique, and even if he doesn't kill him, it buys him time to escape. The commander-in-chief hoped for this, and wanted to use the trick to escape. The commander-in-chief of this army takes 4 shurikens in his hands, and throws them in the direction of the young master. They pierce the air and aim at him, because this warrior has applied the art of shuriken. But all his attacks were repelled by the young master, who rushes to meet him. Taking his strong hand by his clothes, he spins this commander-in-chief in the air, and, using his extraordinary strength, smashes it on the ground, forcing it to ferment like a grain of sand. At the place where the boy put this commander, an incredible chasm of great depth was formed, and this warrior, feeling the incredible power of this extraordinary man. By the way, I lost forever the memory of the soldiers in Sachan. A bloody bath took place, and the silhouette of the young master was covered in it. Seamok had never seen such strong people and such cruel people. The people from the stable did not understand how a person could kill so easily and powerfully. This guy is a real monster. He is incredibly strong. And at that moment, their skin was covered with ants that crawled to their bones. They understood that Damho had saved them, but he scared the hell out of them. This boy is not just a devil. He is an extremely strong person, about whom you can even make legends. And when Damho turned around, he saw a bunch of frightened people, who looked at him and saw that he was completely covered in the blood of their tormentors. Seamok approached him, and she needed to explain something. The young master gritted his teeth because he couldn't stand why this girl had come to this village, but she had no choice. She needed a very strong horse. The young master asks her, did she know that thugs were chasing her? But the girl repeated that she had no choice. But what does it mean, there was no choice? These words must be explained, and she explains that she is obliged to protect peaceful life in this country. Damho only asks, why? Is it more important than the lives of these people? Seamok, with tears in her eyes and a bloodied face, says that she is very sorry that this happened. But the fact is that sacrifices for the sake of peace in this country could not be avoided. And she asks for Damho's help, as his power can help stop Sacheon Sanyang, and she asks for the peace of this country. Damho slaps this girl with all her might, saying it's wrong. People open their mouths wide in surprise. Seamok recovered after the blow and says, I apologized. Dam Ho turns to the people and says, "First she will have to apologize to all the residents." She, crying, says that the fate of this country rests on her shoulders. But the boy does not think that the country is worth the lives of all these people. Simok does not understand how he can talk like that, but it was clear that everything was lost in her. And he says to his friend Jimbo, "You two?" He asks for the horses to get out of here. When the horse was in his hands, he thanks the townspeople for what they have done for them, but the groom was very worried. After all, Sacheon Sanyang is very influential, and if he decides to level their land with a farm, and the guy just said that they won't compare. The groom thought it was very high-minded. Dam Ho was telling his friend that they were leaving immediately. But where are they headed? In the same city of Jongwon? Dam Ho informed him that their path had changed a bit. After all, they are going to Sacheon Sanyang to solve several important issues, and approaching their main fortress. The boy was walking past their security. The soldiers were on guard because the master had given an order not to let anyone in. But suddenly something appeared on their way, and all guests were supposed to arrive only in the morning. Who is this man? And what does he do? Why is he going straight for them? The fact is that this young man radiated an incredible aura, and it only scared him away. And for warriors who have never felt such strength and such pressure, it was scary. They ordered everyone to stop, those who were walking towards them. The thing is, this is not an inn, so let the guy introduce himself. The young master turned to these warriors and asked, "Is this Sacheon Sanyang?" They confirmed this information to him and said that this was not an inn, so let him come at dawn. Dam Ho dismounting from his horse, he said, "If their master is here, then let him come to me." The soldiers said that he does not receive any uninvited guests, and then this warrior with a lame leg begins to walk closer and closer to them. And the warriors don't understand how this guy can be dangerous if he has a lame leg. Dam Ho says that if they don't bring him to their leader, he will go to him himself. This man replies, "A little thing like you says such words?" Dam Ho, smiling at these words, delivers a devastating blow that shatters this warrior into atoms. The walls of the incredible building of Sacheon Sanyang were crumbling. Along with the ruins and their gates broken, the warriors did not understand what was happening. It was as if a hurricane had entered their territory and began to destroy their defenses and hit their squad leader with one blow. Turning him into a dead fighter, the warriors thought it was some kind of ambush, and maybe this guy stole their animals. And it was clear that the enemy was attacking, and it was necessary to ring the bells. Alarm echoes throughout the building, and the soldiers did not believe that they had destruction on the territory. They shouted at this scoundrel, "Who the hell are you?" Dam Ho only said, "Where is their leader who rules this city?" The warriors informed him that their chief was not here now. If this person attacked Sacheon Sanyang, then he must not go. Elite warriors attacked him with their daggers, and they didn't even let the boy think about dodging their swords. And striking him with their sword, they saw that he must perish. But why did their swords bounce off his body so easily? They didn't understand what the hell was going on here. After all, Dam Ho was advancing and tearing their warriors to pieces. They simply stood under the pressure of all these bloody blows, and all attempts to pierce him with a sword were simply useless. He just stood and watched when they would finish, but the soldiers, seeing his strength, asked, "Don't come closer!" Dam Ho bathed in his demonic energy and could smash anyone with a single blow. His eyes filled with the fury of the divine technique Dam Ho used. To break through to Sacheon Sanyang's main base, he used a piercing fist and a demonic beast attack step. And now the walls of this place reflected piercing sounds like the roll of thunder, after which people fell and scattered like falling coins. The best blades wielded by Sacheon Sanyang's men became like twigs against Dam Ho, and he chopped their attacks like an axe, who was chopping twigs on her way. After a while, many warriors were defeated, but in their place came new victims, and this place turned into a bloody bathhouse. And, seeing this result, which led to the fact that all the warriors were lying on the ground, the boy asks, "Now, maybe you will start talking to me." "Where is your head?" asked Dam Ho. One of the soldiers who survived this hacking pointed to Mount Bagda. The young master understood that he had heard something like that somewhere. If he's on the same mountain, then they are on their way. In this temple, where the head of Sacheon Sanyana was, the head was gaining the power he got from the blood demon. After drinking the elixir of divine power, he gained incredible power, and she took root in his body. The elixir allowed him to study and master the forgotten techniques of the ancient art of the blood demon. And in return, John Hansen experienced hell. His muscles were torn and grew, and then in a circle again and again, 1,000 times in a row. Every bone in his body shifted and realigned, causing him to struggle through the night in agony. But in the end, his whole body acquired unprecedented strength and endurance, incompatible with human endurance. And having this power, he felt simply wonderful. His muscles felt like they were made of iron, and yet they were 100 times more flexible. And now this sword recognizes him as a true master. And now he feels the true power of this blade in his hands. Now he has the power to destroy mountains and cut the heavens. He can't wait for the moment to experience the power that explodes in his body if he doesn't release it. Fortunately, he knows one place where he can unleash his inner devil. And after some time, the master leaves this temple. To the question, where is he going? The man answers that in the Tomb of Evil. When asked by his warrior why he was doing this, the leader did not give an answer. After all, he received such power from the blood demon, and it is necessary to pay him with what he loves the most. Blood. We returned to Damho, who destroyed all the warriors in the castle with his power. Reinforcements soon arrived and saw that one guy had caused such a mess. Looking around and seeing who was opposing him, our hero analyzed who these guys were. They saw him as the devil, because this guy had caused such incredible chaos in their territory. But luckily, all the members are here, and I guess we should thank him for bringing everyone here. Hearing the word Hul Supan, the boy thought about it, and they had a reason and a habit of using such a name, because they are known as desert horrors. And under this name, they sprinkled everything here with blood. The young master heard about the desert horrors and thinks, these scoundrels are gathering against him. The desert bandits were rumored to have been destroyed by Sacheon Sanyang and Yeon Hasun, and had a name. But they turned out to be alive and well and hiding among Sacheon. And when Damho heard the name Hul Sapan, I asked what was the matter. But for the first time, someone ignored them. And they told each other that we had a lot of free time. That's why such a little rat started to ignore them. So they will use this as an opportunity to show their power again. And a beautiful moment to destroy Sacheon Sanyang in the blink of an eye. Then, when one of the Hampan warriors went straight to the young master, he asked him who he was. This man with a scar on his eye is called Champignonga. And the people around realized that Kal Sapun were devils, began to act again, and soon a brutal massacre would begin. People only expected one thing. Would these people be able to stop this demon that attacked Sanyang? This man, with a scar on his face, realizes that they only came to Sanyang because of this demon, because of this person who gave them the turning point for their Kalsapun to seize his influence. They were preparing all the time and thought that they would use battle formation, and now they finally met a worthy opponent. And they order everyone to stand in the 1,000 souls position. They point their weapons at Damho, causing him to freak out. They will cut him to pieces with this outfit. Warriors support their master, and instantly activate their combat equipment, which should reveal the order, thousands of souls. After all, the 1,000 souls formation is a battle formation that is used exclusively against elite warriors. This formation uses hundreds of men, acting like gears in a clockwork, and can attack enemies mercilessly and continuously. The 1,000 souls formation is not an ordinary battle formation. It has a fairly high level of abilities and strength of each person in the squad. According to the laws of earth and heaven, each of them complements the other. But when Damho stayed on the ground, all the energy released from lining up fell on his shoulders. The incredible pressure, which could easily kill any person in this world, spread monumentally. And warriors from all sides surrounded him, and their cold martial arts filled the air. Damho, sensing this tension, focused on his strength, and began to emit energy, planning to stop them. Using Damho's attack steps and piercing fist, he rushed at the enemies without problems or delays. Clatters and screams echoed all around as Damho's blows reached their targets, the warriors' bodies collapsing under his onslaught. Maybe I'm not human, maybe I'm a real monster, but the life I've chosen is not my business. I have no regrets, Damho tells them. And it doesn't matter to him what the perfect lineup will be. The number of people in the squad doesn't matter to him. A maximum of 6 people in a squad to be killed at once. Even if 200 is divided by 6, it is 34. And all in order to destroy them, you need 34 repetitions of his blows. And this is the easiest way to count. Just like that, the lineup of 1,000 souls of legendary strength was destroyed. Warriors lost their lives, and their swords missed the mark. But Damho didn't even get hurt by the swords without a doubt. And one day, 6 swords rushed into Damho's body, and when the faces of the warriors showed joy and satisfaction, the back suddenly bent like a beetle's shell. The guy used the Hemguja technique, which was inspired by the body of a beetle that was fiercely fighting off a praying mantis. Damho developed his defense technique, which was equivalent to an incredible shield, and the faces of his attackers changed in an instant when they encountered such a powerful person. Soon the leader of Sanyan approached the Tomb of Evil cave. He held his legendary sword and looked at what was happening without doubt. At the entrance to the cave, he was greeted safely by his soldiers. The leader generally likes this place. He likes the smell of dampness. The simple traders who had been kidnapped into slavery looked up to this leader. Hekno, an old man, was mutilated and lying on the floor after suffering many severe wounds. He turned to Jan Hansen, the leader of the Sanyang. How dare he commit such atrocities in the first place, and is he not at all afraid of the wrath of heaven? The Sanyana leader asked. Where are those people who believed in these heavens? The old man told him that the Blood Beast sect would be here soon, and he would regret his words. But for the leader, the main question is, who else among them will regret it? Because the bloody creatures have already fought with him once. But now he has the blood demon Persimmon, and there isn't a single living soul that can stop him. And then the old man realizes that this scoundrel has finally found the blood demon. Pulling out this sword, he replies that the blood demon nobly left the elixir of divine power to its receiver. And thanks to him, his strength was now equal to his. And now with such a legacy, he has singled out several surprising factors for himself. Johnson's blade can strengthen the bearer. It absorbs other people's blood. And then he used that blade to drink strange red liquid that spread over his sword. The blood demon was a true genius and made such an impressively evil weapon miraculous. The old man, looking at this, realized that this rascal had lost his mind. And if so, darkness would cover the world. This scoundrel began to mock the common slaves right in this cave, filling his sword with blood. This blade drains every last drop of blood from its victim. For an old man who understood that this was the creation of a real devil, and he shouts to all these people to run away and take care, run away from here. This madman had absorbed one victim and wanted another. As this fellow was going to kill them all, they started running in all directions. Instantly, one by one, like mice, this scoundrel caught his victims. Attacking each of them, he implemented his diabolical plans. It was really crazy because John Hansen, known as the hero, who stopped the massacre of Kulsapun, turned into an even bigger scoundrel. And who would have thought that one day such a great man would turn into a monster? And it was simply impossible to stop him, and this killer decided to destroy everyone here. The leader saw no reason why he should leave everyone alive here. The old man said that one of these reasons was that there were people in this cave after all. Sanyan approached the old man and asked him, "So what?" Hekino asked to be merciful to the people. But this fellow explains that he has been patient with these people, and Hekno's talk for a very long time anyway, and puts a sword to his neck. And now, no one dares to tell me what to do. And at this moment, he brings his devilish sword closer to the old man. But some force stops him because he feels something. An incredible force approaches him, and that makes him worry about it. After all, his sword began to react very strongly to it. As an indicator, it shows danger on its way. Sanyang stops and orders his soldiers to go and see what is going on. But before they had time to check what happened, some dark magic made its way into the cave. Hearing this sound, the soldiers feel uneasy. They look around and notice some silhouette moving towards them. And this silhouette had just destroyed their comrade, who fell at their feet and lay broken on the ground. Then the young master Dam Ho entered this cave. The sound of his lame leg echoed all around, and the pressure that emanated from him flooded everything around. Dam Ho, having solved some problems, came to the most important one. The old man looks ahead and realizes that this is the man he met before Sacheon Sanyang's march. This boy was dyed red with the blood of his enemies, and the legendary sword of the blood demon begins to react to this boy more and more strongly. From the way, he comes closer, and then this leader asks him to name himself. And noticing that this young man's eyes were somehow incredible, he told him that he had better introduce himself. But Dam Ho, if this is the head of Sacheon Sanyang, was glad to see him. The leader did not understand what this young man could have to do with him. Dam Ho told him that they finally met, and began to approach him closer, and the tension in the cave grew. His lame leg, walking along the rocky cave, made the ground move. Without warning, he pushed himself off the ground, jumping up, rushed towards the leader, who suddenly did not know how to react to it. Using his devil sword, he blocked Dam Ho's strike. The strength of this young man was so incredible that he was simply shocked to the core by it. Soon a bunch of soldiers ran to the leader's residence. When contact with Simok and Hakno was lost, the Blood Tuareg sect sent a search party after them. And then they found Simok at the farm, who told them what had happened and the current state of affairs. After that, Sim Sum Yong sent soldiers to Sacheon, who had to hurry and arrive at the place on time. They were looking at the huge mountain of Sacheon Sanyang, and the hostess understood that there was a root of evil. Their leader did not understand how they were able to build a mess in this region, and it seems that they have decided to become our thorn in the side, he says. Sim Sumyan claimed that one day they would have to remove them anyway. And now they are in the territory of their enemy. They must raise the flags of the blood beasts. The cavalry must hold their formation and send the enemy territory to hell. With his sword at the ready, he wanted to invade their land by assault and solve this unworthy problem in their way. The warriors of the Blood Beast sect attacked the fortified fortress with their entire cavalry column. During the attack, their troops were quite sure that they would mercilessly destroy anyone who stood in their way. However, when they reached the main gate, they encountered no obstacle and were surprised by the silence of the place. No one resisted. But as soon as they set foot on the territory, they saw that all the soldiers and inhabitants were dead. The place resembled a scene of horror. Mountains of corpses were lying everywhere, and it seemed that something incredible had happened here. It seemed as if the devil himself had visited here, and the only question remained, who could have committed such a terrible thing? In order to gather at least some information about what happened, they had to find at least one surviving witness. Simok realized that only one person could do such a thing, and it was the same young man. However, the squad leader did not understand who she was talking about and asked her about it. In response to his question, the girl explained that it was about the person she saw, the one who saved her. Suddenly, one of them discovered a surviving man who was barely able to stay on his feet. They quickly approached the kneeling man, and the leader of the Blood Beast sect asked him, "Who are you? What happened here after all?" He added indignantly. The wounded man with a scar on his face, although he was badly disfigured, recognized the guild leader. The leader asked himself in surprise how this stranger knew his name, but how could he not know? After all, in front of him is the leader Hellsapun himself. Simok was amazed by the behavior of this man, who, although wounded, was laughing for some unknown reason. The guild leader was surprised because Hellsapun was a Seochan Sanyang organization, but he still didn't understand what the hell happened here. The man whispered through the pain, "The devil himself came here. All soldiers and residents died at his hands. Absolutely all without exception," he added. "He represents a new level of power and has a colossal advantage over all of us," said the wounded man. When asked who this devil is and what he looks like, the man answered, "You will understand everything yourself." After these words, he began to cough, suffering from his wounds. Struggling for breath, the warrior called that young man a bastard full of hatred. In the last moments of his life, he said, "I don't understand how we could lose so easily. We kept all of Yin Yang at bay. How could he do this?" The leader decided to personally check everything and go to the tomb hall. He asked his daughter not to doubt him, because only he can destroy everything here. He didn't get the title of Phantom Swordsman for nothing. After all, this honor was given to him after hundreds of battles, from which he came out alive. He will ruthlessly wipe out anyone who dares to stand in his way. He ordered all his soldiers to prepare for an attack on Bodan Mountain. Gathering together, they quickly rushed to the mountain without wasting a single moment. They headed to the mountain to personally investigate the situation and see everything with their own eyes. And see with your own eyes what happened. The mountain had steep slopes, and it was extremely difficult to reach it. Soon, they almost reached their goal. The leader warned his daughter not to lag behind the squad. When they reached the top and looked down the slope, they were aware that their trail might be followed, so they should be careful. Seven thought that maybe she was exaggerating, but her father seemed stronger than ever. She hoped that at least everything would end well. When they reached the damp cave, they felt an incredible energy radiating from within. It wasn't just a cool breeze from the depths of the cave. It was an incredible, extremely powerful energy. Suddenly there was an explosion of incredible force. The explosion caused stones to fly in different directions, breaking away from the mountain. The warriors looked up to see the leader of Seochan Sanyang breaking through the stone wall, and he appears right in front of their feet. Holding a devil sword, he takes a heavy blow. After an incredible wound from an unknown assailant, he begins to suffocate. He tries to regain consciousness after the blow and get up. His eyes blazed with rage, and the sword radiated the diabolical energy of a blood demon. The leader of the blood beasts, looking at him, understood who was in front of him, but the question remained. What happened to this man? Why did his body become so powerful, and why does he radiate such power? Their eyes met, and they looked at each other, and they heard unusual steps approaching them. They looked around, trying to determine the source of the sound. They felt an incredible energy emanating from this person's steps. The Seochan Sanyang leader asked the attacker, "Is there an old enmity between us, or why did you attack me?" Dam Von replied, "I have no enmity towards you." The leader couldn't understand. "Then why the hell did you attack me?" The young man was getting closer and closer, step by step, and said to him, "It was you who provoked me." Closer and closer the young master approached this scoundrel. People looked around as the Sachon leader was afraid of him. The warriors looked at the cripple and did not understand how he could be so strong. Sachion asks him, Is that a reason to riot just because he instigated it? For it to stop, one of them must die. And he, as a leader named Yoon Hasan, will try his best to make it not him. Damho was sure that his opponent had to go all out. From the Seven's side, they looked at this young man, the leader with the blood demon sword, and saw how much energy there was in this sword. And that energy in Yeon Ha-sung's sword became so strong because of something, and he was sure that he would finish off Damho with just one stroke of his sword. So, to win, it will be enough to hit once and cut that guy in half. Besides, how can he lose to a mere cripple? Yeon Ha-sung's heavenly wind step technique was incredible, and people all around understood that this wonderful technique could disable any opponent. And the blood beasts watched as Yeon Ha-sun grew up in their eyes, and did not understand where he had learned such a martial art. Our hero looked at it without fear at all. Yeon Ha-sun was sure that if the young master who met him in the field could not work his legs properly, then his strength would be reduced by half. Damho in turn accumulates incredible energy in his fists. Yeon Ha-sung shouts that he's going to kill this guy and head to Youngwon, and using the heavenly blade, with boundless fury, he unleashes this blow. People see that this is a special technique, one that only one legendary warrior, the Blood Demon, uses. This incredible force falls on the young master, who stops this sword in an incredible way with his hand. And looking at this, the question remained, how is this possible? This guy easily blocks the blows of such a powerful technique, and despite this, opposes him. There was a huge gap between this man's sword and fist, almost imperceptible. Headshi realizes that he is using the power of this rift to block Yeon Ha-sung's sword. It was simply impossible to believe. After all, like the varnish of silver thread used in fine threads, Damho's energy is able to create a net that covered his body in the manner of armor. And this technique, this absolute, protected Damho from the Blood Demon's sword. This technique was created by Damho in the image and likeness of the bamboo leaf fist technique, and he skillfully used it against such a strong opponent. Using this skill, Damho can block attacks without taking damage. And it is extremely incredible, and when the fist collides with Yeon Ha-sung's face, he is obscured by the flash of this light from the impact, trying to dodge a devastating blow from a maneuverable guy, which, like a hurricane, swirls and brings chaos to this territory. The rocky surface of the lowland on which they were standing begins to melt from such speed and energy, and when the foot of the young master hits, everything begins to crumble, like glass. A huge explosion, like a storm of light that engulfs everything, rises, and people close their eyes. Leader Sachona cannot believe that such a shockwave exists, and he tries to oppose her because everything is very strong. To create such a shockwave, only the vibrational shock of one's own steps is used. It was like something divine. The warriors who were around could not believe that such a person existed and could fight. Seamok, opening his mouth, cannot hide his surprise. Everyone using every ounce of protective chi energy felt the wave damage their eardrums from standing near the impact. And the warriors who were just watching wanted to use the protective chi energy faster, but they did not have time to do this and suffered from the fact that their ears were bleeding. Damho looked around and began to regain consciousness. His eyes filled with a flash then, when the leader of this cursed organization pushed off the ground and attacked him. He, like a snake, catches his blow with his fist, and their blood began to diverge in different directions. Then the Sachon leader realizes that this guy has grabbed him by the neck. He clenched his teeth as his sword fell from his hand. From coughing, from the fact that some boy who came to him makes the real blood demon suffocate. And lifting him higher and higher, he strangled him, forcing him to die. It was not the end. He wanted to deal with him, so that this scoundrel would not be in this world. And people just closed their mouths after such a blow. Because the leader of Yeon Ha-sun was hit on the rocky ground, and he broke the strength of the ground with his head, shattered the earth and the heavens. This is the so-called technique of Damho. Damho created it while walled in a cave, while breaking very heavy stones. To get out of this crypt, it was necessary to destroy one huge boulder blocking the exit. But in order to get out, it was not enough to destroy only one stone. The passage could be filled with other heavy stones. Therefore, as soon as he understood how to prevent a collapse, he had to drag the debris and arrange a passage. He repeated the same action hundreds and thousands of times, learned to break stones into smaller pieces, smashing them on the ground. And looking at this sight, people in fear understood how incredible power he had. A man with terrifying strength came from the Xinjiang regions. Camp leader Sachian was helpless before this guy and died like an insect. This person is a real monster who can crush Yongwon under his feet. This man was a real devil for the blood devils. Where he came from is unclear. Damho, smeared with the blood of his enemy, told these men that they had cleaned up the mess for him, After taking the sword from John Hansen, the people gathered to discuss the moment that man had committed so many unforgivable sins in his pursuit of the weapon. It was lucky for them blood beasts that he was killed by that damn ho warrior before he fully mastered the blood demon martial arts. If it weren't for that guy, all the lands could be in danger. Because of this, the two legendary items, the demon sword and the book of forbidden demon techniques, are now in their possession. Looking into the distance, Damho realizes that he is not interested. Simoc repeats that these are the forgotten techniques of the blood demon. They are very lucky that John Hansen didn't become a master of the arts. And it's scary to imagine what would happen if he used them. He would just kill someone like the young master. Damho doesn't even doubt that. He was sure it could happen. And they are not interesting to you anyway? The girl asks in surprise. All in all, Damho is a human. He did not answer these questions. He only said that he would leave this city tomorrow. So let them do whatever they want with the sword and the book. To the question of the leader of the Bloody Tvaryoks, whether he really gives them these things, they decide that if this is the case, then they will store them in their base. Still, it's an incredible day for all of Sachon. Jiayu Pass is one of the few places connecting the Redlands with regions beyond the Great Wall. Shanghai Pass is the main road leading from the edge of the desert to the Great Wall, likewise, but to the west. 12 years ago, the boy walked this way accompanied by many other warriors. And then, when he was on his way to these lands, people looked to see who was going to them. If he passes through Jiayu, he will reach Changwon. The soldiers stopped him because they sensed danger. Young Master Damho guessed that they were people from the Junan sect. In turn, these soldiers asked him not to approach and to stand where he was standing. To begin with, he must introduce himself and say why he's coming here. Jinbo revealed that they were heading to the House of Flowing Silver, and they had passed this way a year ago. If this is the path to Flowing Silver, and you are really the Flowing Silver House guys, then we heard that there are about 100 people in Flowing Silver House. Then why are there only 2 of you? They asked. They gave documents, reported that bandits attacked them, and this is a signed letter from the head of the Bloody Tvaryok sect. If that's the case, then the sect vouches for you. And it seems that this seal and signature definitely belong to leader Sim Sum-young. But the last phrase sounds rather strange. After reading this letter, the man understands that at any cost, these people must be missed. He was struck by these words in the letter. Still, if the House of Flowing Silver was destroyed by bandits, so the only question left for the guard is, how did these 2 survive? Damho tried not to respond to the guard's words, but simply turned away from him. Then this guard got angry. Don't you hear what I'm asking? The energy of the young master begins to leave his hand. Damho didn't even move, and the guard started laughing at this young man. He doesn't even react, but he used force. The guard then decided to use the Jatie trigram on the young master's hand, a technique that the Junan sect specializes in. If the enemy succumbs to such a technique, he will not be able to free himself under any circumstances. Damho tried not to succumb to such dangers and asked this man to remove his hand. In turn, he shouted, "You are a real scoundrel!" Although the guard was unable to do anything. Damho only smiled at his actions, and he diligently tried to use this technique. Soon his hand began to rot and his fingers began to twist. The guard with tears in his eyes steps back from the young master. "Next time, if you touch me, you will dig your own grave." He admitted that this person he had just touched was incredible. Damho asked him again if there was even one reason why he could stop them. And yet it turns out that there is not. He orders his soldiers to open the gate. Then when the door opens, the boy is heading forward with his friend. They needed to hurry. Damho and Jinbo hastily reached Lanzhou, which is the starting point for the western regions and also the capital of Gansu. They wanted to find an inn to spend the night. Having entered the territory of the Semen Inn, they mounted their horses and Jinbo revealed that the sect that is in the Hongam mountain camp is close, and the head of this sect is a very famous warrior. Also, his birthday is coming up and people are gathering here to celebrate. This is why there are so many warriors in this house. They sat down at the table and asked for the best dishes. Among the most famous dishes here, there is mutton soup. The best. Jinbo wanted to try what it tasted like and ordered 1 serving. The waiter said that the food would be ready soon. It seemed that all the warriors of Gansu had gathered in this place, and there was nothing they could do. The influence of the Hongam mountain camp on all of Gansu could not be ignored. This facility was run by the only son of Lord Hyan Moonsoken, and he wanted them to be able to impress the head of the camp. Then they would definitely be able to succeed. But Zhou Sanshin's student did not see anything like that here. And the reason why Hongam Mountain Camp is also thriving as one of the great 10 sects of Guangdong is, of course, Lord Xingpun. So you can't make enemies while traveling. On the contrary, they need to be appeased. These boys sat down at one table, placing their swords side by side. One of them didn't understand why they were doing this, and since when did they even care about the Hongam mountain camp. Moon Soken asked her student to watch his tongue. At this point, the young master Jimok got a little angry at their crown dish, as they had gotten rid of the smell with spices. Moon Soken paid attention to our hero, and he seemed very strange to her. Jimok thinks they added dried garlic and vetiver root, but he does not understand why the dish is sweet. They probably added up to 6 more plants, and it was just incredible. Moon Soken looked at the boy next to her. She was impressed that he had interestingly identified the ingredients by taste, and it was clear that he was also heading to the Hongam mountain camp. After asking Damho if they would stop at the market, the boy replied, "Of course." The market was quite lively that day. People were actively trading, and there was a surplus of goods. Jimok approached the grandmother and asked if it was open. She said, standing at the kitchen table, that her shoulders hurt a lot. She made the broth early in the morning. She apologized to the boy for not being able to cook him food because of shoulder pain. The boy was a little upset by her words. He doubted himself, of course, but Damho encouraged him. Seeing the spark in his eyes, he asked him to do what his heart desired. Jimok wanted to take the initiative into his own hands and prepare everything necessary, including noodles. When asked why he wanted it, he replied that he was good at cooking, and if she said what needed to be done, the boy would do it without any problems. Soon they started working on it together. His grandmother told him what to do, and the boy did it, and people in the bar noticed that she was not the only one cooking today. She explained to them that her hands hurt, and this guy was just replacing her. But what difference does it make to these soldiers if they just wanted to eat a cup of beef noodles? The boy with a spark in his eyes began to quickly prepare the dish. He was good at it, and he was good with tools. Soon he prepared noodles with beef and served them to the soldiers. They were looking forward to it and were very excited to try it. They noticed that the boy coped with cooking better than the grandmother. They couldn't believe that he made these noodles. A real talent. Jimok was very grateful for these comments and hoped that his father would be proud of him, because he would become a great cook. Also, the author of this video will be very grateful to you for your warm comment. We continue further. It looked quite tasty, and the warriors assumed he must be her grandson. That man decided to watch him. If the boy will help for a few days, his name is Song Huang. He is the head camp chief at Mount Hongam. Jimok asked what help was needed from him. Song Huan revealed that there will be a reception in honor of their chapter's anniversary soon, and their hands will be tied. So it would be great if you could help them with the cooking. Jimok wasn't sure if he could handle such a responsible task, but for this man, if possible, he would be happy if the boy accepted the job. Feeling a little insecure, Jimok decided to agree. He decided to ask his brother if he could go at all. Damho was nearby and thought for a moment before letting him go. Song Huan, seeing that there were 2 of them, said that he would inform the head and supervisor, and they would both be allocated a seat. After eating, Damho went to his horse. He was met by a student of one of the masters, who asked, "Is this your horse?" Damho didn't particularly like talking to strange types. The man continued that the horse looked too elegant next to a non-warrior like him, and ordered him to sell this horse, because he would give a lot of money for it. Moon Soken was by her brother's side and was upset by his rudeness. Damho didn't respond to his offer at all, and no matter how much he offered, he refused. His sister decided to force her brother to withdraw his words and calmed him down. She apologized for her brother's rudeness, explaining that he was not so bad and had made a mistake by contacting an unfamiliar master. Moon Soken wanted to apologize for him and begged for forgiveness. Then her brother said that they were staying at the camp at Hongam Mountain. Jimok came to the young hostess and said that he had received an invitation from the chief of the camp at Hongam Mountain and would help with food there. Hearing these words, the girl was really happy for him and said that they would see each other soon at the camp. Her brother Moon Soken was looking at the horse. He thought that this horse would definitely become his because he considers Damho an unworthy owner. And it doesn't matter why, but this scoundrel is also heading to the Hongam camp, and he has an insidious plan. In Wuquan Mountain, there is a strange mystical story about a general named Guakye Bun, who was able to use a whip to create 5 springs for his thirsty soldiers. Hongam Mountain Camp is located right in the center of Wuquan Mountain. And over the past few days, the camp has seen a large influx of people. And all because the reception of guests for the 60th birthday of the head of the camp on Mount Hongam, Li Sunping, has begun. People from all over the world gathered for this moment. Soon some delegations arrived in this place. It was the camp of Mount Hongam, and with them came the young master with Jimok. Looking at this camp, they were amazed by its incredible beauty, and the location was simply wonderful. Everyone was preparing for this event. The hostess needed people in the reception, and they also said that they did not have enough guest rooms. Let's put it this way, if you roll into hell, they themselves did not have enough people, and it was necessary to hurry, because there were a lot of people, and prepare food for all these people. And as long as Jinbo works for them, he can stay in this building. He can walk around the camp freely, but do not make noise, because guests are gathered here. And always be careful, because there are a lot of people. This was addressed to young Mistress Dam Ho, who promised that everything would be without a problem. And then they sent women who should follow this commander. Soon they came to the so-called kitchen. They arrived here, and right there outside the door they were waiting for them. Chefs from all over the world gathered for this beautiful day. The commander ordered Jinbo to come in and make himself at home. Then, when the cooks saw that the chairman had arrived, he inquired how their preparations were going. They replied that everything is fine, and he decided to check what it tasted like. And taking one of the prepared dumplings, he tasted it and immediately felt better. Everything was just beautiful and very tasty. The cooks asked who the child was. He replied that it was a boy he had found. His cooking skills were incredible, so let him be in charge of the oven. These people were amazed because he is allowed in the furnace, and he looks only 13 years old. And they even jokingly laughed at him, because the boy is younger than their assistants, but Jinbo wanted to be trusted. The fact is that this guy's father was an excellent chef, and this kid works best in the kitchen, so trust him and let him be behind the stove. The child even had his own equipment and tools. He unfurled his knives and demonstrated that he was ready. His appearance was good, but he showed the furrows of very hard work. And despite the fact that he is a child, the chefs admitted that he is still a little experienced, and it was visible from the quality of its preparation. Watched closely by the cooks, he handled everything perfectly, and they were even pleased that such a boy works as well as ever, and he is worthy to stand by the stove. But one of the cooks could not accept that this scoundrel had taken away his workplace. If it weren't for him, his life would have turned out differently. The reception on the occasion of the anniversary of the head of the camp in the mountains is not just a magical feast. This event became something that united many sects and cults from all over Hansu. And all the people who arrived have to suffer a little while they find a place. Since the territory was small, and there were a lot of sects and warriors, after a while they drank all the drink to the last. And one of them thought it was a wonderful place. They drank it all, and as soon as a commotion started over one of the men, there were people who did not know what sect he was from, but it was clear that he had no money. This man asked for bottle after bottle. The waiter didn't know what to do. The master had already drunk a lot, but he claimed that he was not drunk, and said the famous phrase said by Lizzie. He began to tell me that life belongs not only to us, but equally to the earth and the heavens, and asked if the waiter knew what that meant. But how should he know? This means that life and death are predestined for him by heaven, and all he can do is focus on enjoying the moments of his worthless life. And this wise man so many years ago said such a great thing. How can you now lose the moments of life? And since human history is complex, there would not be a single sage, so that alcohol would be far from him. And yet after these words, the waiter decides to quickly bring him wine. This man was satisfied with himself. It should have been like that in the beginning. Dam Ho walked past this man's table, and this young man shouted to Dam Ho that there was a free seat. Of course, he didn't particularly want to sit down with him, but what could he do? Then, when Dam Ho was walking towards him, it could be seen that his leg was injured by this man. He has a seat for Dam Ho, but no one can or wants to sit next to him, and he asks him to sit down politely. His name is Jeon Ye-woon. He greets this man who sat down next to him, and for him, it seemed like the beginning of a lightning-fast relationship and exchange of names. And he decided that to begin with, he needed to fill the young master's glass, but he admitted that he did not drink. It was such a shame for this man. He does not enjoy the taste and sensation of drinking. Well, there's nothing like that here, and he thinks it doesn't matter. To each his own. Still, he gets him to talk anyway and asks where this Dam Ho is from. The young master told him that he was from the outer lands. And that means he's referring to lands beyond the Great Wall. And that's a huge way he's come. This uncle shows him respect. He always wanted to go there. Soon, all the people are informed that the Dawn sect has arrived. And the head Lee Singpun was very popular. People gathered to meet him. This man would finally see these warriors from this sect. One of them was Namak Sop. He is called the Heavenly Master. Some people couldn't even believe that they had the honor of seeing one of the 10 heaven-sent talents. And this was truly a fateful opportunity. The young master heard the phrase 9 heavenly talents sent, and paid attention to it. Because it was a human Namak was the Heavenly Master he set his sights on.